Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
It is 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly noticed, and we are now in order. Our first item of business, I'd like to call forward Pastor Tony Rambo for our invocation. All rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to be here to hold this meeting up in prayer. I'm the Reverend Tony Rambo, and I stand before you both as a pastor of the newly formed River Community Church in Holton, also chaplain to the Christian Community Home here in Hudson. It has been about a year that we have been gathering in Holton as a new church. My wife and I have over 15 years. We have 4 kids and serve in a variety of ways within this entire community, and so I'm honored to be here. My passions, along with my family, is to teach others and bring people closer to the things of God. It is in that capacity that I stand before you to open this meeting, to call upon the Lord's presence for wisdom, guidance, direction. And so if you would, please pray with me. Awesome Heavenly Father, God, our Creator, our Provider, our Sustainer, and our Savior, it is now through the grace of our Lord Jesus that I call upon you to enter into these proceedings. It is only through your wisdom and might that we are able to be here today. You are the God of power, wisdom, justice, and through you authority is given that we might administer peace in your name. God, would you grant us the ability to make decisions with wisdom and guidance? Would your Holy Spirit give counsel to these leaders and all the elected officials that they may lead with the type of confidence that comes only from you. May they always seek the ways of righteousness, justice, and mercy. May they be enabled to lead this county with honesty and integrity. God, for those that come here with a particular understanding and view of the challenges and decisions before us, would their passions for the best possible solution be evident? God, you are a God of solution. It is by your Son, Jesus Christ, that we are able to experience the solution to our sin and our falling away from you. It is by his power that this world will one day be fully reunited with your glory. It is by his ultimate sacrifice, the just for the unjust, that we would be pardoned from this and reunited to our Heavenly Father. Lord, would your Spirit move here now? In the name of Jesus Christ, your Son. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank
you. Board members, would you please indicate your attendance for the roll? And we are fully in attendance. All 19 supervisors are present and welcome. The consent agenda is in front of you. There are 3 items on the consent agenda: the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on 4 September, the announcement of the date of our next meeting, which will be on 5 November, and the rezonings there are 4 rezonings. There are some technical amendments to the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances, and the number 4, the library exemptions from those municipalities that have libraries, with the exception of the city of Hudson. Detail in all of those consent agenda items were contained in the administrator's memo that was distributed. Chair would entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Motion from Supervisor Osnes, second from Supervisor Perchin. Proceed to vote. Are you ready? Joe, do you have your second in? Proceed to vote. And the consent agenda is approved. Just let me briefly review the agenda that's in front of us today. The indication of the 4-H ambassadors will also include a proclamation proclaiming this UW Extension Week, and I'm going to move that down immediately in front of old and new business. We will complete everything on our agenda down to that point, and then have the presentation of the proclamation and introduction of the 4-H ambassadors for a brief presentation, after which we will stand informal for approximately 15 minutes while we have cake and ice cream. Now, for those new supervisors that are here, this is not a monthly occurrence, as you know, so don't get used to having cake and ice cream at every meeting. But once a year, we do have the 4-H ambassadors here, and it is a welcome occasion when they come. Those refreshments, I believe, will be across the hall in the conference room across the hall. When we get to the old and new business section, immediately after our refreshments, the first thing that I'm going to request the board to do is to consider suspending a bylaw that we currently have, and that is a bylaw that requires a person that wishes to address the county board to have the written authorization of the supervisor from their district. I'm going to ask the board to suspend that rule for this meeting. I think we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone in attendance that wants to speak. So that does require a 2/3 vote. I'm asking you to, when we get to that point, to simply suspend that rule for this meeting, which would mean that all this person that wants to speak needs to do is fill out a comment card and hand it forward, and they don't have to find their supervisor and get their permission. I just think that's appropriate for today. So be advised about that. Then at that point, we will have public comment for as long as that goes. Each person will have an opportunity to address the board for up to 3 minutes if they choose, and then at the end of the public comment, then we will move into Larry Lester's presentation and then our main agenda item for today. Okay? I am not aware of any appointments that we are making today. Pat, I'm not aware of any
appointments.
The county administrator's memo was distributed in your board packet. It did have detail, not only on the items on the consent agenda, but it had significant detail in other areas. I refer you to that at this point, and I turn this over to Pat for any comments he wishes to make about the memo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and the Extension Office. Congratulations, and I know the chair is going to have a proclamation later to honor your celebration for the years of work in Extension, and thank you for the cake and ice cream as well. I think it's one time we can say when you can have your cake and eat it too, maybe. So enjoy it. Now you have to start these reports with an element of humor because they can get a little dry. The board chair referred to the agenda memo. This will be a monthly addition to the agenda, and I've hammered that before and I've mentioned it before, but please refer to it. If you have any input or suggestions as to the agenda memo, it's just a summary of the agenda, kind of a starting point for you to refer to items on the agenda, but don't rely on it for all of your research. It's just a summary of issues, but hopefully it'll be a useful tool for you. Also, a week ago Friday, I sent out an administrator's update, and it was mostly regarding building facility issues, but I've talked to the staff, and I would like to do this more often on a wide variety of issues that we don't always talk about in board meetings, that the administration and the staff and all the departments are working on to kind of give the board just a general flavor of some of the issues and projects that are ongoing that you don't really hear that much about. And so we're going to try to do this. I'm thinking maybe every other week, so every 2 weeks. I'm not sure, once a month might not be enough, but maybe over time we'll go to monthly reports. But this will just give you kind of an update on a wide variety of issues that are happening in the departments that we don't really talk about daily. So kind of stay tuned for that and let me know, give me your feedback on those updates as you get them. The staff has been working diligently on trying to get the 2013 budget balanced. We're getting close. As I reported back to the administration committee a couple weeks ago, where we had a large gap between revenues and expenditures. We have worked over the past 2 weeks to significantly reduce that, to balance the budget. By the time we bring it back to the administration committee, I think on the 15th, and then to the committee of the whole on October 23rd, the budget will be balanced, and we will give you a good summary of the highlights and the lowlights, if there are any, of the 2013 budget. But we're not quite there yet, but the staff, the finance department, has been doing a great job. We're meeting individually with department heads. We've had one round of meetings. We're going back now and making a second round with department heads and talking about areas in their budgets where we can reduce expenditures. Because the gap that we were looking at was fairly significant initially, but we've been able to reduce that. The Pay for Performance project, which you approved several months ago, we're about midway through, a little over beyond midway during that first phase of Pay for Performance. I'm in the process of meeting with department heads to review their goals, to see where we stand in terms of their accomplishment towards reaching those goals. And then by the end of November, mid-December, a final evaluation will be made on whether or not we hit the target on our Pay for Performance goals. Overall, I'm seeing good progress. There's some areas where we need to kick it up a notch and try to achieve those goals. But overall, we're making good progress. I'll give you a final report in November after we approve the budget, and we'll go through a final report on Pay for Performance. The goal then is to continue to roll this out in 2013 with the rest of the workforce, and we're currently working with our union membership to discuss how best to phase in Pay for Performance for the entire workforce, which is a goal of mine, but it will take some work. But we've had good discussions with the union leadership over that issue. As I mentioned, the Committee of the Whole will meet October 23rd. We only have 2 agenda items. One is the 2013 budget and also an update on our strategic plan. We're going to enter into a next phase of our strategic plan where we will review the current priority areas of the board, and then we'll also discuss with you a citizen survey, which we're going to be doing to try to gather feedback from the citizens of St. Croix County as to their involvement, their input into the goals and objectives of the board in terms of building and moving forward on our strategic plan. It's a very important element of strategic planning. It wasn't done formally when we put this plan together, so the next step that now is to gather input from the public as we move forward with our strategic plan. Those will be the only 2 items on the agenda, but those are 2 fairly significant issues, and so we'll spend hour and a half with the board to go through those two items. Lastly, spent a couple days in La Crosse County this past week with several board members and the board chair at the Wisconsin Counties Association Conference. They had some good sessions, good breakout sessions. I hope that board members that were there, several new board members, in fact, found it worthwhile, a chance to collaborate with your partners across the state. And if you can come away with one idea from those conferences that's good, something that's stuck in your head that say, hey, you know, what are we doing here in St. Croix County? How can we do things better here? That's the whole idea of these conferences, to talk to your partners across the state in other counties. And you can come away from these meetings saying, well, hey, we're not alone. We're all dealing with similar issues and trying to find solutions to some pretty complicated problems. But overall, I thought the conference was good. Several county administrators from across the state have recognized some things that we're doing here in St. Croix County in terms of our IQM2, our meeting management software, which the board has faithfully and patiently and diligently worked in helping us roll that out over the past several months. Other counties are looking at what we've done here in St. Croix County and how far we've advanced our meeting management. And so we're being noticed. Also for results-only work environment and also pay for performance. Other administrators and county board supervisors are recognizing what we're doing here and trying to find out from our success and our, I won't say failures, but bumps along the road, lessons learned, and that's how we do things in Wisconsin. We learn from each other and we collaborate across the state. We have 72 counties, and we can help learn from each other, and that's what it's all about. So anyway, it was a good conference, and I'm glad that several of you made it. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or follow-up comments from any board member with respect to Pat's comments in his memo? You must have done a good job. I seldom see this group silent.
No.
Thanks, Pat.
They're just holding it for later.
I now direct your attention to the annual committee and department reports that were included in your board packet. Some excellent work that was done in these annual reports. I encourage you to read them carefully, perhaps even save them for future reference. Just for edification, those in the audience and those that would be watching this, we do have annual committee and department reports from the Register of Deeds, from UW Extension, from the Land and Water Conservation Department, from the Parks Department, from the St. Croix County Fair Board, and from the Planning and Zoning Department. Looking at the clock and seeing where we are in the agenda, we are a little bit ahead of where I thought we would be at this point. So I am informed, I don't see Gail Meyer, but I'm informed, Gail, that perhaps you wanted to make some verbal embellishment of the fair report. Is that?
What I submitted should be just fine. If they have any questions.
You're welcome to if you want to, and I was told that you wanted to. So.
No, if they have any questions, they can remain silent as well.
Well, at that point, then, I have no other alternative, unless you want to hear, jokes from Pat and me, and probably you don't, to at this point then move to the presentation of the proclamation and the 4-H ambassadors. The only reason this becomes a little awkward is that I was informed that one of the strategic parts of this, and that is the arrival of the ice cream, is scheduled for a little bit later. So we face the possibility of taking a break and not having the ice cream, but as I watch some of us walk in, we maybe don't need the ice cream anyway. So. At this point, I would like to call forward Marie Witzel, who is the 4-H Youth Development Agent, and Joanne Sprain, who is the Family Living Agent. If you would come forward to the podium, I would like to present with you a proclamation, and then I'll turn the program over to the two of you for the 4-H program. Let me tell Marie gets up here. Is Nancy here?
She's here, but there are no kids yet.
Ah,
They're ice from school.
Ah, okay. This is Marie and Joanne. And I would like to read a proclamation. Whereas on February 12, 1912, Ernest Luther was appointed the state's first county extension agent in Oneida County, at which point I inquire, how many of you knew that? Ah, my bet was that no one would know that. And whereas 2012 marks the 100th anniversary of this unique educational partnership between cooperative education and counties in the state of Wisconsin, and whereas this partnership, as pioneered in Wisconsin, embodies the true meaning of the Wisconsin idea that the resources and knowledge of the university shall be extended to the people of the state of Wisconsin wherever they live and work. And whereas the 100th anniversary of Mr. Luther's appointment commemorates the contributions of all extension educators to the growth and development of the entire state, and whereas the purposes of cooperative education is to teach, learn, lead, and serve, connecting the people with the University of Wisconsin and engaging with them in transforming lives and communities. And at that point, I'm just going to stop. That sounds like your mission statement. I think that was the mission statement that was presented at La Crosse by the head of Extension. And whereas the vitality of today's cooperative extension program can be credited to the men and women of vision who accepted the challenge in 1912 to create the Wisconsin County Extension System. Now, therefore, I, Darrell Stanifer, Chair of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim October 2nd through October 7th, 2012 as St. Croix County UW Extension Centennial Week. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Standifer, supervisors, and Administrator Thompson. We have not been here since 1912, but Extension has been in St. Croix County since the 20s, so almost 80 of those 100 years. And we really appreciate the support that you give us to do the work we do, not only in 4-H, but in family living, community natural resource development, and agriculture, and other areas that we see as needs in St. Croix County. At this point, I'd like to introduce the staff that's here. Ryan Sterry, who is our agriculture agent. Ryan? Okay, Jessica is helping with the ice cream and the cake, I think. Okay.
Joanne, have these people come forward.
Okay, come forward. Jessica Sprain, who is the interim 4-H advisor. You may recognize the last name. I do not supervise her. I had nothing to do with her being hired. Marie is her supervisor. And Marie Witzel, who is our 4-H youth development agent in St. Croix County. We are missing Pete Kling, which most of you know, who is our community and natural resource development agent. Also, Mary Lestrud, who's our Wisconsin Nutrition Education Program Coordinator, and Sarah Johnson, who has just started this week with both Pierce and St. Croix WNEP. So again, we really appreciate your support, and I'll turn it over to Marie.
We like to take the opportunity in the month of October to also let you know that National 4-H Week starts on Sunday. So as you're driving around the county, you will maybe notice some window displays that we're promoting in the 4-H program that's happening. Nancy, I'm guessing we have no young people here, but any words that you would like to share on behalf of the ambassadors and the great promotion that they do of the 4-H program? Nancy Berman serves as the advisor of that group. And because of some timing issues, we may or may not have young people that are able to speak with you today, so we'll see.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having us this morning. We really do appreciate it. The young people are coming from school. They happen to all be coming from St. Croix Central, and they're on their way, I'm sure. And then they'll get here and find out there is no place to park. So that's why we were watching for them out there. I am a volunteer with the 4-H program. I don't usually speak to you because you get the young people to speak. And part of the 4-H program is teaching them to speak in front of people. And by the time they reach the high school age, they're pretty good at it. I was very impressed with my own children to find out how much they learned and that they could do this. Just to give you an idea what happened to our family in the 4-H program. When my daughter was little, I said, let's join Girl Scouts. All your friends are in it. And she said, no. She wanted to be in 4-H, and I really don't know where she got that from because neither her father nor I were in the program. So she waited till she was in, at that time, 2nd grade, and we joined the 4-H program, of which her brothers followed. In the ensuing years, our kids learned to set goals. They learned how to achieve those goals for anything they wanted to learn and do in the program. They got to travel around the nation. We used to have what we called state-to-state exchange. Each one of my children of 3 went to a different state, and the following year, those state kids came back here. Their favorite place to visit was the Mall of America. They liked to come here. They also traveled internationally. If you don't know it, 4-H is hooked up internationally. We have students that travel to Australia, Japan, Korea, Finland, Norway, Switzerland. I'm trying to think. Some of them have been to Greece. So a lot of different places that they can go, and they stay with host families there. And then those children oftentimes come back here. Every summer, the state of Wisconsin hosts at least 40 young people from Japan and Korea that stay in homes with other children about the same age. And because we don't have children at that age anymore, we host the chaperones. And this year, Harurumi Aratomi was with us, and we took her down to Pepin and to the Little House because almost all Japanese young people read the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. And that was a really big thing for her, and we took her on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. So we gave her the full American experience. And Daryl is laughing because he knows my husband. Other things that my children learned through the 4-H program is that when they got out into the working world, our kids are all in their late 20s now, I asked them, what did 4-H teach you? Well, my youngest was in the Marine Corps, and he came out as a sergeant. And the first thing he wrote me was, Mom, 4-H taught me so much more about leadership than the Marine Corps will ever hope to. Now, that doesn't say a lot about the Marine Corps' leadership booklet, but it said a lot about what he did learn in 4-H and how to work with people. He told me that he had a lot of guys under him, and he never had to really yell at them to get things done. He just said, this is the way it is, and he was able to mentor them because he learned that in the 4-H program. What's so unique about 4-H is that we get to work with all different ages and the entire family. So the older children are teaching the younger children, and they don't realize at the time how much that's going to help them as they become adults. Our daughter works in symphonic management, kind of a unique job, but she helps manage symphony orchestras. She just got a new job in Sioux Falls after being in Miami, and they're here. And she said the biggest thing that 4-H taught her was organization. She has to be highly organized to do all the things that she does to keep the symphony where they're supposed to be. And she said 4-H taught her how to do that. So a lot of good things. My other son is in marketing, and I said, what did 4-H teach you? And he said networking. How to network with friends all over the nation that he has stayed in touch with. Yay, Facebook and email, I know. But it worked for David, and it helped get him a job. And we have our young people here. Come on up, guys. Girls. 2. Okay. We're thrilled that they made it. We have Mark Jacobson and Shelby Little. They have both been ambassadors for the last year. Shelby for 2 or 3. This is their third year as an ambassador. So they're going to share with you a little, I'm so glad they made it. They're going to share with you a little bit about what 4-H means to them. It means a lot more than coming from me.
Well, as Nancy said, my name is Mark Jacobson. I've been in 4-H for 10 years now. And 4-H to me is one thing in my life that has provided me a way into my future. It's given me a chance to work on my leadership skills and social skills with new people every day. Without 4-H in my life, I would have never met my favorite animal of all, the llama. I have 4. They're my family. There's Caitlin, Blanco, Ori, and the best one of all, Amigo, my friend. They have taught me to be patient, to have self-control, to take care of something besides myself. 4-H has made me a person that is ready for changes in the world and will never, wow, and whatever is thrown at me. Thank you.
Well, I'm Shelby Little, and I've been in 4-H for 6 years. And it has taught me many things, but what stands out the most is my leadership skills. Well, I'm standing in front of you right now, so it's given me the courage to talk to crowds as big as you. And okay, I'm not really prepared. I can admit that because I'm in 4-H and I have the courage to admit one of my mistakes, and it gives me the courage, and it's just crazy. So it has taught me, 4-H has taught me to take charge when help is needed. And like, for example, when my club needed a secretary and nobody else would step up, I would be the one to step up and take charge for them. And responsibility. Sheep, okay. Okay, I have sheep at home, and they've taught me patience, like Mark said, like through 4-H, and okay, I'm really bad.
Keep going, you're doing good.
I've learned responsibility through my sheep, and I've learned responsibility through 4-H with getting 2 meetings on time, unlike this one, and turning my record books in on time so then I could get awards for them, and etc. 4-H is having okay, I already said that. Well, I've already been laughed at a lot, so I am really grateful to be in 4-H, and I don't think I would ever leave, so.
Yeah, we're ready if you want it.
You ready?
Okay. We thank you very much. And yes, they really were on time, and to have a good 15 to 20 minutes to go through what we were going to say and all that. But we would like you to join us for treats. Okay? We have cake and ice cream. Once upon a time, I told Mr. Standifer that, do you really want ice cream this hour? And he said, yes, it's a healthy dairy food. So now, you have a little carbs to go with your healthy dairy food. Please come and join us.
Board members, we will stand informal for 15 minutes. Thank you, board members. We are back in session. At this point, Chair would entertain a motion to suspend the rules and bylaws pertaining to the requirement for a supervisor permission to speak. Is there a motion? Motion from Supervisor Horn, second from Supervisor Brinkman. Any discussion? Are you ready? Ready?
Yes.
Proceed to vote. and that bylaw is suspended for purposes of this meeting. At this point, we are going to proceed into public comment. Are there any additional persons that wish to speak? Do we have all of the requests to speak passed forward? If we don't, just fill one out and pass it forward during the time. But I'd like to have all of them so we know how many requests that we have. We want to allow as much time as is requested by speakers. We want this to be an informative, open exchange. We wanted to make it easy for people to speak. I think that it's important to stress that we will be expecting civility and decorum. We want to present, I think, a serious discussion, listen seriously to the comments. I would ask that expressions of disapproval or approval of anyone speaking not be indicated. I think that's the professional way to handle a discussion like this. So I would ask that if you disagree with someone, please do not boo or catcall. If you agree with someone, please refrain from applauding. I think that is appropriate and professional. And I say that not only to the audience, but I say that to supervisors as well. Once we get into our discussion, we are going to be objectively discussing an issue. We are not here to vilify in any way any person who has an opinion that may be different from our own. We are all trying to do the right thing as conscientiously as possible. We have a number of requests for people to speak then. I'm going to hand these to our vice chair and ask him to mix these up and shuffle them in some form. And then when he hands them back, we will simply take them in the order that he gives them to me, just so there's no indication of trying to steer this in any particular direction. Just mix them up, Roger, and we'll take them. Oh, yes. For purposes of discussion today, we are going to ask that comments be limited to 3 minutes. I think brevity will be a virtue. But the two supervisors immediately in front of the speaker's rostrum, Supervisors Kilber and Attino, do have a stopwatch. They will be timing, and if you are still speaking at 3 minutes, they will simply hold up a colored card and indicate that your 3 minutes has expired, and I would respectfully ask you at that point to conclude your remarks if you're still speaking. We want to be as collegial as possible, but I think out of respect for everyone here today, and certainly out of respect for a number of people, we not only appeal for your civility and your brevity, but if you are still speaking at the end of 3 minutes and the timers indicate that your time has expired, then please conclude your remarks. Anything else that should be indicated for the good of the order? Yes, we'll invite people to come up here. Turn the microphone on. Cindy will turn the microphone on. The reason that we'll ask you to come here is that this meeting is, of course, televised and is archived, and this way your comments will be on the record and will be archived for those that wish to watch this at a later date. Okay, so with that, and these are the order that you gave them to me, and I'll apologize right now. If I mispronounce anyone's name, it is obviously not intentional. I will do the best job I can to pronounce them correctly. If I mispronounce your name, and when you come up here, you can correct me. So the first speaker today is Suzanne Van Mealy.
Good morning, board and residents. I'm Suzanne Van Mealy from the town of Troy, and I voted twice, as about 2/3 of the voters did in this county, to keep our nursing home. We've heard that other nursing homes have open beds, But what you don't know is that private homes don't have to take every Medicaid resident that comes in the door. This is the reason why the county home is needed, to provide a safety net for those who have been rejected. And that is why government-run homes receive intergovernmental transfer funding to help pay for those seniors. In 5 years, from 2005 to 2010, our 65-plus age group grew 25%. Most evident of the need for this home is the fact that this age group grew 9% from 2010 to 2011, and that's the source of, my source is Division of Public Health, Wisconsin Department of Health Services. We're projected to grow 63% from 2005 to 2015, from about 7,500 actual in 2005 to 12,200 projected for 2015. And the source of that is the population projection data for this county from the state of Wisconsin. We have only 509 beds, according to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, after subtracting out the 22 beds from the county home this past April. How can we care for those needing a nursing home, even by 2015, if we have only around 500 beds for 12,000 seniors? In the short term, we need this home. In the long term, we need this home too, because once the Stillwater Bridge is built, we're going to have, we're going to experience an accelerated population growth in the northwest part of our county, which, by the way, our county home is very close to. More and more people will be moving in, adding to this age group, even at a higher pace. It's a fact both in the short and long term that we must address the growing number of baby boomers that we will need, that need nursing home care here in our county. It is right and just to do for those who can't do for themselves. Most of the voters here want to do this. It seems we know the cost of everything, but understand the value of nothing. I ask for both our short and long-term needs, and for the sake of nursing home residents who can't be here to speak for themselves today, that we keep this county nursing home. Thank you.
Kim Dupree.
Well, good morning. We have an opportunity to do this right. For the past 6 years especially, we've kind of been waffling on whether or not to keep our county nursing home. And really it's been more a matter of will than ability. We know that with the right leadership in the home, we can serve our residents and their families. We can be a safety net for the community, which is our social contract as opposed to the private and nonprofit homes. We can even pay our workers a living wage. It was done under Frank Robinson. We know it can be done. And we have lots of reasons to go forward. The bridge is coming. Baby boomers are coming. We have examples of neighboring counties in Polk and Dunn and La Crosse that are doing this responsibly for the taxpayer. You know, hindsight's always 20/20. And I'm sure there's a lot of things, if we had to do over again with the nursing home, we would do differently. But nonetheless, our census is at 48 today. How can that be when we have brand new homes popping up all around us? And our DON told me one time it's because of the internet. People do a search, and they find out we're a 5-star home. So they come check us out. And our services, and our staff, and our reputation keep our home full. However, a new one-floor building would give us gains and efficiencies to help serve our residents. There wouldn't be any more doubling of stuff from equipment, computer equipment, to personnel when you stretch 50 people across 2 separate floors in a building that was meant for 130 people. Additional targeted services could bring in revenue that would offset the Medicaid losses, similar to what La Crosse County does. So we have the opportunity today to wipe the slate clean and start again. Our facilities in New Richmond are at a crossroad. I mean, this board voted a couple years ago to vacate the Human Services building. That's where the building that I work in. Significant monies are going to have to be spent no matter what we do, whether we build a new nursing home, move Human Services into their building, whether we remodel the current nursing home for their use, find another spot for Human Services. Even if you let us all work from home and level the campus, it's going to cost money. There'll be significant dollars expended. So it's not a matter of saving money as much as it is how we're going to spend that money. I understand that this is not Dupree County, and I'm not the only one whose vision matters here, you know. But neither is it any one of your individual counties. Horn County or Keesler, I'll pick on those two. It's not, you know, Stanford County or Larson County or Thompson County. But this is St. Croix County. And the voters voted twice. And when you see what margins of support the nursing home has, that transcends all walks of life. That's all income levels, rich and poor, middle class. That's all political beliefs, Republican, Democrats, and independents. That's all religious beliefs, Protestants, Catholics, Jewish, atheists. They all support the home. From Glenwood to Hudson, from Somerset to Spring Valley, from Forest to River Falls. This whole county has spoken twice. And it's one thing we all can agree on. While there's many things we may disagree on, that's the one thing this county has agreed on. So I ask today that you support your people. It's their priority to provide a home for those who are vulnerable, a safety net for the needy. And I ask today for your vote to keep the home open. I also ask you to give serious consideration to a new one-floor building. Thank you.
Phil Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board, for having us here today. My name is Phil Park. I live in Baldwin, Wisconsin. I've been living there since 2002. I come there from North Dakota. In North Dakota, I moved from Oklahoma to North Dakota, and ever since, I spent almost all my adult life in public offices, working for the people of North Dakota. I didn't do my job. I did the job of the people. A lot of times it went against the things that I wanted or thought should be done, but I molded myself into a character to serve the people that I was representing and that was paying my salary, that was paying me and was keeping me in office. That's the way I look at it, and that's the way I look at you people. It's easy to take the easy way out, to get rid of something that is troubling to us. But it's hard to fix things that need to be fixed. I would suggest that you take a different look. There will be another election. That's not a threat. It's a known fact. There will be another election. There may be another vote on this issue, for all I know. But twice it ought to be enough for anybody to learn something. So let's get back and let's get to doing the work of the people. Let's forget trying to get rid of something, and let's get back to trying to take care of not only today, but tomorrow and the next day. The seniors in this county will more than double in the next 20 years. That's a fact. Thank you.
Sue Brown.
Good morning. My name is Sue Brown. I appreciate you listening to me today. I'm here to speak for my 91-year-old mother-in-law, who is a resident at the St. Croix Health Center. She's been there for over 6 years. She's treated with love and kindness and consideration. There's not a day of the week that I've ever walked in there that she hasn't been well taken care of. And for you to close this facility when we have spoke so loudly to you as your constituents, I cannot believe it. I am disappointed, saddened by this kind of representation. You have to listen. If you haven't been there, if you haven't gone to the healthcare center and walked through and see the kind of care these people, our residents that live there, are, how well they are taken care of. This is beyond a 5-star facility. We need this. You can't take it away from the residents of this county. You cannot. We've spoke to you twice. 66% of us said last time, keep this facility. I don't understand why you won't listen to us. Because when we get to speak again, it will probably mean that you aren't going to be supervisors any longer. And that's what I have to say about it. Thank you.
Dan Hansen.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, $1.5 million has become a nearly iconic number. It's mentioned with moral platitude and with pitched righteous indignation. Well, the taxpayers of St. Croix County cannot save $1.5 million by closing the health center. This figure is hyperbole, ginned up to convince you, supervisors, to vote to close the nursing home. I'd like to tell you 3 non-cash flow line items that clearly show how the taxpayer cannot save this amount. If you consider the depreciation of the building, you consider the chargebacks that are charged to the nursing home for the salaries of management and the executives of St. Croix County, and you consider the intergovernmental transfers, which is nearly $450 or just at $450,000. That amount of money comes from the state. It does not come from the taxpayers of St. Croix County. You add these 3 numbers together, you get about $1.3 million. There's many more non-cash flow line items in that budget. This is hyperbolic number, this $1.5 million, which is put together specifically to influence you to close the St. Croix County Health Center. And if you look at the cost of simply closing it, which is real money, you're looking at costing the taxpayers and hurting them in the short term, added together with the long-term expense of not serving them. When it becomes unprofitable for the private industry to serve people by having health centers, nursing homes open, you're doing a great disservice by closing it. But let me tell you that the hyperbole given to you by people who have an ideological desire to close this nursing home is simply not washing when you just consider the pure numbers, just these 3 line items. The chargebacks, the depreciation, and the intergovernmental transfers. You add them up, you get $1.3 million. It's hyperbole, and it doesn't wash. Take the emotion out of it, you look at the cold, hard numbers, and it simply isn't going to save the taxpayers a penny. Thank you very much.
John Lefto. And the person that would follow him, I'm going to indicate who's on deck so you can be ready as the speakers conclude. Next, following John, would be Tom Irwin.
John Lato from St. Joseph Township. I'm asking the board to vote to keep the home open. My wife and I are involved in the home in two ways. We're volunteers, and we're also customers. We volunteer only a couple hours a month, but there's many, many more volunteers than us. 65. Most of them are there at least every week, some almost every day. We also volunteer at a private nursing home in the county. I won't say which one, but big difference. There's about 15, maybe 20 volunteers. Nowhere near the activities of the home in St. Croix. No family picnics, pontoon rides, shopping trips. They got to play bingo once in a while. I'm also a customer. My mother had a serious stroke 3 years ago. She lived in northern Minnesota. When I was a volunteer, I watched at the nursing home, the St. Croix nursing home, how they treated people, how they cared for people, the facility. I thought it was top notch. Easy choice. I like the rehabilitation program. I like the facility. You say, oh, it's 2 stories, it's old. I like the space. I like the social room. If you haven't been there, it's a room about this size. That's where things happen. That's where they serve meals, family gatherings, dances, bingo, sing-along, all kinds of stuff. You going to have that in a private nursing home? No. Too expensive to build, too expensive to maintain, cool, heat. My mother's 94 years old. She loves it at the home. The staff, the other patients, they're her family. They hug each other every day. It's her life. It's her home. Where's she going to go if it closes? She's a Medicaid patient. Who's going to take her? No profit Medicaid patients. No requirements for private homes to take them. What am I going to tell her if you vote to close it? Please follow the voters' wishes. Keep the home open. Find a way to make it work. Thank you.
Tom Irwin, followed by Rick Prokash.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tom Irwin. I'm a former county board supervisor, and I did serve on the Health and Human Service Committee, so I have a pretty good understanding of the whole picture of what we're dealing with. And today I want to start out with talking about truth. When we build truth into our life, it provides an honest foundation. Truth is a part of our protection. Without truth, everything in our thought process becomes distorted. Our ability to analyze is distorted. The decisions we reach are distorted. When people want to hide the truth, they begin jockeying the numbers. This is what's been going on at the nursing home for over a decade, a deliberate, willful denial of the truth. People don't tell the truth for fear of rejection. The voters might vote no on a referendum. The county supervisors might close the home. My responsibility is to tell you the truth. Your responsibility is to tell me the truth. It's not to twist it to fit how you want it to be. If you went to buy a used car, wouldn't you want the owner to tell you the truth? If you were going to buy a home, wouldn't you want the seller to tell you the truth? Of course you would. So why then do you make an exception for the nursing home? Why would you put out a referendum to the voters of 333,000 when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's 2 or 3 times higher? If you took a damaged tire into the shop to be repaired and they told you not only needed a new tire but you then needed a new wheel because it was bent, would you say it only cost us $100 to fix the tire? Or would you say and leave out the other part? Of course you wouldn't, but that's what we've been doing at the nursing home. This yellow handout is the most accurate truth you have ever had in one short document. This is what the electorate, before voting in a referendum, need to understand. About 90% of the households in the town of Hudson had this, and they voted it down. And I have every doubt that because they were informed, it was an informed electorate, they say no to the nursing home. As Thomas Jefferson famously said, though the will of the majority is in all cases to prevail, that will to be rightful must be reasonable. So it brings the question, why does our nursing home lose $1.5 million every year? As economist Milton Friedman said, if you place the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years there will be a shortage of sand. The board has been giving the government employees chance after chance for more than a decade now to make the business profitable. It's not the fault of the employees, no individual government worker. It is simply a fact that government, by its nature, is inefficient, and without a profit motivation, there is no reason to do the job well. So why would we ever want to continue spending money at a government home when the private homes are doing this work better? Why would we want to burden our kids with more debt that has no need? This home will close eventually, no matter what. The question is not when, the question is not will it close, but when. I urge you, for the sake of the 1,300 homes that have been foreclosed on over the past 2 years, to bring this waste of money to an end here today. Thank you.
Rick Procash, followed by Buzz Marzoff.
I am Rick Procash from Star Prairie. You're hearing a lot of numbers going all over the place. Yes, we have it. No, we don't, whatever. The home is essentially full, as with the new ones that opened up. Those were projections. What's going to happen when Osceola, Deerfield? They're open. They're filled. People are still coming in the door. They still need care. That is not going to stop. You close the doors, there's still going to be those people who are going to need that help. It's still going to happen. There are indirect costs, spreadsheet monies, which will not go back into the taxpayers' money if the home closes. You still are going to have wages that are going to be paid, to the county administrator, for HR director, finance director, IT, whatever. Those positions are still going to be there. They're just going to have less responsibility, but still get the same pay. There's not going to be the savings there. There's a recent letter to the editor about the nursing home being the county's ATM for a number of years. In 1990, the $2.3 million was removed from the books, and it was acquired by the county, along with ceasing the $325,000 per year rent that the nursing home was receiving from the Human Services for the building. Rent for the farmland, does that go to the nursing home? I don't think so. When there's talk about a new building, what is happening with the existing building? If you build a new building, is the county, are you giving credit to the nursing home for that older building? Probably not. We look at the dollars that are being spent for consulting for a number of years. When there was an in-house employee, Frank Robinson, he was getting the job done. He was showing how to do it. Why don't we get to that? Why can't we do that? We look at, and I wouldn't say that there's inefficiency in that nursing home. You don't get to be a 5 stars with being inefficient. You're doing great. There's a great job. We need to follow the lead of the public. My wife and I, we pay federal taxes. We pay state taxes. We pay county taxes. We pay sales taxes. We pay vehicle use, or whatever is on the motor vehicle form. And we voted twice to vote yes for the home. You're always asking consultants. Listen to the consultants from 2008 and 2012. They told you yes to the home. Thank you.
Buzz Marzoff, followed by Bill Driscoll. Bill, parenthetically, while Buzz is coming up, I see you indicate maybe want to speak. Do you wish to speak? Sure. Okay, you will follow Buzz. Buzz, you're up.
Good morning, supervisors and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Buzz Marzoff, and I live in the town of Troy. Mr. Chair, thank you, and thank you, supervisors, for suspending the rules and bylaws of this body in order that those of us present may make comments. I'd like to preface my remarks by reiterating what I think is the motto, if not the mission statement. No, it's not the mission statement. I guess it's the motto of our nursing home. Our residents do not live in a facility. We have the privilege of working in their home. I was in the nursing home recovering from hip surgery in 2008, and I can authentically speak to the truth of that statement of purpose. The care I received was outstanding, and I went there not because I was a county board supervisor and expected preferential treatment. I went there because of the kind of facility that it was, and that it was close enough so that my wife could visit without driving great distances. My first comments relate to an article that was published in the New Richmond News last week following the Health and Human Services Board, which preceded that. It contains comments made by Mr. Lester of Wipfli, the consultant whom the county hired to give opinions about our nursing home. And some of the excerpts read as follows. Wisconsin, along with many other states, is systematically getting rid of licensed nursing home beds. While the reductions make some sense right now, in the face of dropping demand, it could be reviewed as a risky proposition. According to Larry Lester, a nursing home consultant advising St. Croix County, he warned, however, that this move away from skilled nursing centers comes at a great risk as the baby boomer generation heads into their golden years. Demand for nursing home beds may be lower now, he told county officials at last week's HHS meeting, but 20 years from now, and I might add parenthetically, when we're dealing with far more expensive dollars than we are today, there could be a huge influx of people needing some specialized care. State officials, along with those in the business of caring for the elderly, need to look realistically at what the future holds and map out a plan to handle any number of such scenarios. We can't just ignore it and hope that it goes away. With that in mind, one wonders about the wisdom of closing the St. Croix County Health Center nursing home at this point of its history. There may be enough open beds in private facilities right now to take care of area residents in the late stages of their life, but the boomer wave is approaching. By keeping the New Richmond facility open and building a new facility and adding an assisted living complex, catering to low and moderate income individuals, our county government will have taken proactive steps to do its part to meet the care needs of its residents for decades to come. In closing, I will make this comment. Our government is a government of, by, and for the people. The same people who have elected you to this county board office that you hold, and the same people who, in 2 consecutive referenda, which decisively and unequivocally communicated to you their willingness to continue partially supporting our county-owned home with their property tax dollars. My challenge to each of you this morning is that you listen to those whom you represent and to vote in accordance with their expressed wishes. Thank you sincerely.
Bill Driscoll, and followed by Steve Hermson.
morning. I'm Bill Driscoll from the City Beautiful, and we're proud to have some facilities. We have the Deerfield, we have the Wisconsin Cancer Center, we have Westfield Hospital, and we have the St. Croix County Health Center. And it's something in my mind, it really perturbs me when we think about the economics of supporting this facility. We should be thinking of humanity. Think of the elderly. I'm one of those baby boomers. I'm going to need a facility someday, hopefully, and hopefully it's supported by the group of people here that are representing the St. Croix County Board. Thank you very much.
Steve Hermson, and followed by Dan Hansen. Dan, did you turn 2 cards in?
Well, you know. I yield my non-existent second term.
Thank you, sir. In that case, Steve Hermson, followed by James Mayer.
Would be a great deal to do. Put it in twice. Anyway, good morning, Board Chair. Thank you, board members. I understand exactly what you guys are facing right now, since we've deliberated and debated this many times over the years that I was on the board. And I'd like you to realize, I'm sure you all do, that this is more of an emotional issue than it is a logical one. We have to keep that in mind, that every supervisor, when you take that oath of office, you do so as an understanding that you are an extension of the state. And the St. Croix County Nursing Home is a state-run program. It's not a county program. We need to keep that in mind, that those dollars that are allocated to that come from the state, and they are allocated as far as setting the limits of what those are. We, on the other hand, have come along and said that we would fund beyond. Well, I'd like you as supervisors to realize who you're really penalizing when you do this. I went through and, just for an example, I took a peek at the Wisconsin DPI website on the school district of New Richmond. And for 2010, there were 7,592 income returns filed, with a median income of $35,984. Now, I want you to keep that in mind. Of the 7,000 people, cut that right in half, and the median is 35,000, and everybody else is below that. So half of that population up in New Richmond. When I look at the housing makeup of just the city portion of New Richmond, you had 1,398 homes that are valued at less than $100,000. You got 1,444 homes that are valued between 100 and 150, with a dropping significantly after that to between 150,000 to 200 is 710 homes, and then 285 above 200,000. The piece that you need to understand and remember is the people you are hurting the most are the ones that have the lowest income and pay and have the lowest valued homes. Those are the people that are getting hit with their property taxes, with a levy subsidized portion. So we're putting the brunt of the burden on the people that can least afford it. This brings it back to me and why my letter went in explaining why you as supervisors don't need to abide by a required, I'm trying to think of the term right now, not non-binding, a program that's not required. That's what I'm trying to say. So, non-mandated program that we're using levy dollars that people at least can afford it, and you're putting it there. So keep that in mind, of who the people you really are representing. Thank you.
James Mayer, and followed by Shirley Masick.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to all of you. This is a good example of what our government provides for us, this facility and all of these people who are speaking and the interaction between all of us. And I say our government because the people, we must remember that if you go on with this business analogy that I've been hearing so much about, then the people really are, the people of St. Croix County own and are the employers of you and everything else, including the county nursing home. So we need to keep that in mind. And the people have told you, the bosses have told you on the county board to not close or sell their five-star nursing home for a long time now. Local newspapers, even those that might not be in favor of what the majority is in favor of, have been critical of continued efforts by some people to maneuver this board into closing or selling the nursing home against the will of the voters. I have to read this because I'm not known for being terse, especially with the city council, which I was on. Many of us were at the Health and Human Services Board meeting in New Richmond when the closed cell option was once again voted down. That vote, in my opinion, should have been presented to the board and to the public. The rationalizers of closures once again went against the will of the people of St. Croix County and maneuvered the closed cell option into a confusion motion sent to the St. Croix County Board. That confusing motion. That option should not have been part, in my opinion, of any recommendation from Health and Human Services, and I hope this board will take action today to eliminate it from consideration. One of the rationalizations by the advocates for closing their home was so-called fiduciary responsibility, a gross misapplication of that phrase. For whom have they really been acting with fiduciary responsibility with all of their version of what they consider to be the truth that is not necessarily have been objective? It has not necessarily been objectively for everybody to review and confirm that it's the truth. It certainly was not fiduciary responsibility for the people who have told you for years to sell the nursing home and that they are willing to finance it with their taxes, whatever the amount that's put in there. When you really look at what it's going to cost per house, and it's not even as expensive as coffee money, to allude back to one of the references from one of these rationalizers. Another tactic being used by the rationalizers for closing the home is to distort the truth by calling it a business. It began as and continues to be a human service, and the voters recognize it as that. That is why it is also classifiable under the Health and Human Services Board's activities. The closed cell advocates claim that, what they call the private market is doing a fine job of providing the same services offered to all members of our county by our nursing home. That claim is unsubstantiated, as you've heard from figures. If you just look to those and don't look to the value as well, it's unsubstantiated on a one-to-one objective comparison of our county home, of which we are the owners, the people, and all of its services with any one of the private market or profit-making businesses that cherry-pick their admissions. Even if you accept the business analogy, if you owned a business and your operations manager or consultant or administrator were assigned to focus only on cutting expenditures, staff, and operations, you couldn't stay in business. In the case of our county home, wouldn't such cuts reveal the sole intention to close the nursing home for the benefit of the so-called private sector businesses?
Shirley Masick, followed by Ellen Ard.
I am Shirley Matzik, a citizen of St. Croix County, and I'd like to talk about our county today and how we care for the citizens as you're preparing this new budget. This obviously includes another discussion about the nursing home. Many of you are hearing a lot of big numbers, $1 million, $1.5 million, soon it'll be $2 million. These numbers are meant to scare you. Has anyone heard the big number 66%? Have you even heard 66% twice? We citizens of St. Croix County know how our county was built in the many communities where our families homesteaded. There was Hudson, North Hudson, New Richmond, Baldwin, Glenwood City, Somerset, River Falls, townships such as Troy, Hudson, St. Joe's. While I currently live in the city of Hudson, my family's homesteaded in the town of Troy in the 1860s and the 1870s. This is my county home. These families cared for and helped their neighbors, and that's how those communities succeeded. Our county motto until very recently was "Service is our purpose." It's been changed. But no doubt that's how and why the nursing home opened in central St. Croix County in New Richmond, the central part of the county, soon after that, in the late 1800s. The good news is that at least 66% of us still living here still have those values. You're elected to represent us on the board. When you hear those big numbers again today, I ask you to understand that 66% of us who have spoken, written, and voted are smart enough to know what big numbers mean. We aren't afraid that we personally have to come up with $1 million or $1.5 million. That's a scary number. We don't need you to think for us or to assume that we don't know what we were saying when we voted. We want to contribute the few pennies that will needed per day to keep this safety net open for our neighbors when their health fails and they need skilled care. Something just occurred to me this morning, that if you have this mindset that the majority vote doesn't matter, why are 19 of you sitting in these seats today? Your opponents should be sitting there. In 2 referenda, those who voted to close the home also lost. So what is the most important big number you should listen for today? 66%. We already voted, and we expect you to represent us with your vote today. Thank you.
Scotty Arndt, and followed by Loyola Wasco. I apologize.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, supervisors, ladies and gentlemen. As one of the fastest growing counties in Wisconsin, we have been faced with unique and difficult decisions when considering the future of St. Croix County and the direction we will take. 2011 marked the first wave of baby boomers turning 65. I'm a member of that generation, and there's a tidal wave coming, a tsunami, if you will, and we need to be prepared for it. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 70% of persons age 65 will need long-term care options. They will need assisted services, senior living, assisted living quarters, nursing home care, extended medical care, home care services, which, as the state is leaning towards by having home care, which this county at one time had, allows seniors to stay in their home much longer. It lowers the costs, enabling them to keep that home and then moving into an assisted living facility at a later time. We have an opportunity today to plan for tomorrow. We have an opportunity to plan further to the future, 30 years to the future, when my generation hits, when my age group hits. And for you, if you are still on the county board, you will be dealing with a large number of persons. My age group was the largest of the baby boomers. And trust me, in looking at their demographics now, we're in trouble. When we look at the St. Croix County home, and a lot of numbers have been thrown out there, I'm going to tell you this. One number, which is a really big elephant that jumped off the page at me, is that we have been paying for over a 4-year period a contract for a nursing home administrator that is out of this world, $1.2 million over 4 years. This is a position at best which should have been temporary. We should have been hiring a full-time nursing home administrator, but because of the inflexibility of the board, the nursing home, and the conditions, we were unable to do so. No one's going to take a temporary position. Today is the day that we make the choice to become permanent, to get our roots in and go for the future. This is the opportunity to build a future. St. Croix County is a well-heeled county with little debt. This has been accomplished through a commitment to service and due diligence by county supervisors who have preceded you, by current board members who have been long-standing, and by the board members who are currently in office. You are going to write a new chapter of St. Croix County history today. What will be your legacy? Thank you.
Loyola Wasco, and I apologize very much for mispronouncing your name.
That's all right, everybody does. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to speak to you. My name is Loyla Waskell. I have worked at the county nursing home 1 week shy of 29 years. I'm also a member of ASME, Local 2721, and that local represents many of our county employees. In an ongoing effort over the last 5 years, the represented employees have made it clear that the nursing home employees are willing to work with the county to continue offering the best services for our senior citizens and others who need care, including my husband now. We've made sacrifices through wage and benefit concessions, working with fewer care providers on the floor. We work there because we love it. What we do and want to make sure our residents get the best care, diet, and comfortable surroundings that we can provide. They are family to us. Excuse me. More recently, Carol and Lana asked employees to offer ideas on how the home could operate in a more cost-effective way. We came up with a list of 26 questions to save the county money. On July 31st, those ideas were offered to Pat Thompson, Tammy Funk, and Fred Horn, but we have still not heard from Pat if any of these ideas fit with the vision of the county home. Some critics of the home have attempted to place the blame on nursing home employees. And I need to remind you, over the years, employees and the county have both agreed to wage and benefit contracts. We understand that some additional wage and benefit adjustments are needed and are happy to discuss them with options in a fair manner. There was a period at the home not more than a year ago when we operated in a more cost-effective manner because we had a very capable and committed nursing home administrator as a county employee and made sure that the home ran efficiently. I encourage you to commit to keep the county home for the security of the residents who live there now and for future generations. In return, the employees commit to continue working with the county to maintain costs and continue to provide 5-star rated care to whomever needs it. Please vote today to keep the county home. Thank you for your time.
This concludes our public comment period. On behalf of the board, to all members of the audience, I appreciate very much your civility and decorum. I think this speaks well for the citizens of the county, the manner in which we have conducted this discourse. And at this point, we will move to the presentation of options regarding the St. Croix Health Center nursing home. This will be a presentation by Larry Lester. Coming to this board today for consideration as an action item is a resolution, and included with that resolution, coming from that standing committee, were identified 3 options. So to walk the board through that discussion of those options and that presentation, I introduce to you Larry Lester from Whitley.
Thanks. My name's Larry Lester. As many of you know, as far as a little background, I work exclusively in the nursing home industry, in the long-term care industry, pretty much helping organizations like yourself try to figure out what to do with their nursing homes. And I think one of the things that I kind of took out of the public comment that I definitely want to clarify is from our perspective, or my perspective, any of the 3 options hopefully are explained to you in logical and fair manners. Obviously, I'm not in the market of closing nursing homes, otherwise I'd be out of business because I wouldn't have any clients to service. So what we hope to do today is, first of all, give you a little bit of overview. We've heard a lot of talk about baby boomers, services, cost, and all that stuff. So I think it's important to start out with a little bit of an overview of what the state's looking at, okay? Because what the state wants to do is going to drive what you end up ultimately being able to do, just based on, like I said, what their goals are, your goals. So first of all, to kind of give you a little bit of an overview, and we've talked about the baby boomers and them coming into long-term care. Obviously, the first start of that is what we call the young Medicare residents. Those are the ones that are 65 that have just crossed over and are now eligible for Medicare. Those people typically use our nursing home services for hip replacements, surgeries where they're in essence trying to better their body, typically stay in the nursing home, covered under Medicare, and many times go back into their own home or community. As that population ages, okay, so we start out in their 65, as they age and become 80 or 85, then they typically become longer-term nursing home residents. So just to give you that time perspective, when we talk baby boomers, when are they going to start to impact our nursing homes? I'll say in a more full-time basis, is typically 80 or 85 years old. So we got that vision in front of us. Now let's look at the state side of this equation. Today, the state does not pay the cost of providing care in a nursing home. There are many studies that say that deficit is $35 a day, $40 a day, that the state underfunds nursing homes today to pay for that care. If we take a look at that and say, okay, what is the shape of our state budget today? Okay, we all know how good that is and the challenges we face at the state budget level. And now we portray both of those two forward, okay? So we have a state government that is struggling. We don't really want to increase taxes. You know, we're limited on what programs we can offer. And we have this big bubble of patients that are potentially coming into the long-term care services. You can say 10 years, you can say 15 years, you can say 20 years down the road, okay? I actually sat on a committee with this representatives of the state and some other association representatives of the industry, and that's what we talked about, is what is the state's plan to deal with that, okay? To tell you the state's plan to deal with that, and I think it was mentioned by one of the person's public comment, is really to, I'll say, back up where care is provided in our system. So what do I mean by that? How long can we really keep somebody in the home under home care? Okay? What other technology, what other services, what else can we do to kind of make sure that those people stay in their home as long as they can? Because obviously that's where they want to also. And from the state's perspective, because you're not paying for the building they live in, most of the time you're just paying for their care, it's a very cost-effective model for them. The one challenge to that is in more rural areas where travel becomes an issue and you have to get care providers there. So that's the first step. As we back people back up into their home, we now slow down how long it takes them to get to assisted living, and ultimately we hopefully slow down how long it takes them to get to the nursing home. So that process is that in the state's eyes, how do we reduce nursing home utilization from its current level to a lower level in order to be able to afford it in our state budget 20 years from now when the baby boomers get there. Okay, does that make sense? Confusing? So we really don't have the funds to pay for that population when they get to be 80 years old and are Medicaid. That's the bottom line under our current system at the state level, okay? The second challenge we have in nursing homes is many of our facilities are outdated, okay? Many of our facilities do not offer services that at least are expected that the baby boomers are going to want to buy when they get to that point, okay? And what I mean by that is take something as simple as bathing, okay? In many of our facilities today, our bathing services are provided somewhere down in a different room where the people are wheeled down to that room, they're given their bath, and then they're brought back to their room, okay? The new model of that, or what the state would like to see, is obviously those bathing services provided within the resident's room. Showers in the room, baths in the room, stuff like that. So the second part of it is I think the easiest way to explain it is this idea, and we've heard this discussion of home, it's the resident's home, it's their home, is this idea of, right now many times we bring the residents to their services. We bring them to dining. We bring them to activities. The new model the state wants to see is that the activities are literally brought to the resident. So there's dining in each household or each unit of the nursing home. There's activities that occur there. So those are the two dilemmas that the state is facing. One, how do we deal with this large population of baby boomers that are going to need services and still make that fit into the budget? And two, how do we deal with an aging physical plant that needs to be renovated and replaced? So just to give you a little bit, and we'll talk about some of their answers as we kind of go through the presentation. Now, as we take that and we go down to the, oh.
You can turn on that monitor. If you like, you can see it from there, so you don't have to turn around.
Oh, okay. As we talk about St. Croix County, obviously, as we all know, the overview of 3 options, there's really nothing magical about these 3 options. They're pretty much the options that most facilities are facing today. Remaining current facility with expense reductions. You could say, or you could add remodeling into that phase. There's a lot of things that they're looking at, but we typically deem that what we call the status quo model. That's in our world, that's what we say is, we're really not going to do anything too extraordinary. We're going to kind of let things go as they've been going, and we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing. That's kind of what that first one talks about. The second one, which obviously a number of facilities have looked at, there's actually facilities today that are obviously being sold and bought, is the idea, do we close the nursing home, do we sell the nursing home? And when I listen to the public comment, it really comes down to, as board members, what is the value of providing that service into this community? Because you're probably not going to provide it at a break-even amount, just for the reasons I talked about, that the fact that the state actually underfunds the program, somebody has to make up that difference, okay? Who makes up that difference? Well, right now, Medicare makes up a part of that difference. The private pay payer makes up a part of that difference. And in your guys' case, the county makes up part of that difference, okay? So that's, and then the last one is build a new nursing home. And again, this is not talking about that 5-year plan or 10-year plan. This is really talking about a 30-year plan when we talk about building a new nursing home, and what the consumer will want to have, during that time frame. So that's the 3 options that we're going to go over. Before we go over the options, we're going to lay a little background for you. And just lay a little history, a little background of St. Croix County and their facilities. This is just an overview of the empty beds, the average empty beds in St. Croix County from June to August of 2012. And obviously the bottom line to highlight there is there are 73 empty nursing home beds, or an average of 73 empty nursing home beds during that time frame. Okay, so when we talk about capacity, is there need for the nursing home beds? Obviously, with 73 empty nursing home beds, that's a question for you guys to really answer yourself. The next piece is what is the impact of new facilities? What if we build a new facility? One of the questions we always get is well, what if it's still half empty? What if still nobody comes and we still don't have enough residents? What this slide shows is that the facilities that have been replaced, and these are just 4 examples of facilities that have either done significant renovations or have actually rebuilt their nursing homes. And what this points out is those new facilities are so unique that they're full, okay? I would say, I know the Deerfield here in Richmond is not yet full, but it'll be getting there. I mean, if you've been to these facilities, if you haven't been to these facilities as a county board member, that's something actually to take a look at. What I always tell people is it's not rebuilding what you have today, just a newer model of it. It's actually providing care to the residents in a different way than it's been provided under our traditional nursing home system. So I actually had a client I worked with, and they're like, well, why would we just build a new nursing home? What's wrong with the one we have? And like I said, it's not just the fact that maybe the boiler is ready to go. It's also the space design to provide care differently within that environment. As far as competition, and unfortunately or fortunately for you, you're located right in the hotbed of most replacement nursing homes. There's been more replacement nursing homes in this area than anywhere else in the state of Wisconsin. And what that triggers, obviously, is once your neighbor goes and replaces their nursing home, and now you lose market share to them, you're going to come back and do something to get that market share back. Okay, and that's what we've seen. We've seen Parkview do it. We've seen Spring Valley do it. We've seen Deerfield do it. We've seen Osceola do it. So like I said, this area is very well represented for new facilities. Just to kind of give you a couple new ones, Deerfield, obviously we're familiar with them. This one now says opening. They are actually open. Baldwin Care Center has been approved for the property incentive. So what that means is they've submitted an application to the state with a plan to build a new facility, okay? No guarantee that it'll go forward, but there's a plan being submitted. And Glen Haven also has done the same thing, okay? So both of those facilities have submitted plans to the state. And again, as the important part of that is as we talked about, those new facilities, once they're built, typically become fully occupied. Okay, they're a service that people want to purchase and buy. The last bullet point down there talks about a property incentive, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, this is the state's answer to how do we fix these old, outdated buildings. And the state actually has a property incentive plan that will provide you additional reimbursement should you decide to choose to build a new facility. One key component of this property, two key components of this property incentive is, first of all, your plan has to be budget neutral to the state, okay? There's no funding at the state level to build new nursing homes, so your plan has to be budget neutral to the state. And the second part, and part of that, how that ties into it is you're probably going to have to give up occupied beds in order to make that budget neutral to the state, okay? And just a little bit of why for that. For every occupied bed you give up, okay, the state's assumption is that person will be serviced either in an assisted living or a home care service, okay? And it's not a resident-specific resident issue. The state's perspective is that there are residents in our nursing homes today that are getting cared in our nursing homes that don't need to be cared for in our nursing homes. They can be cared for in a lower care setting, assisted living or home care. Now, which facilities that are, who that is, how do they come up with that information? They actually look at the nursing home utilization per thousand for the state of Wisconsin compared to other states. And so that's their basis of, well, why do they say we have too high a nursing home utilization is because of that comparison of Wisconsin to other states. Okay, so part of the property incentive is, yes, we want to help you build a new facility. The two things they want to get back from that is, one, they want the empty beds out of the state. Okay, they want the empty beds returned back to them. And two, they want some of those occupied beds taken out also to, in essence, force the industry to learn to care for those people in different settings and differently. Why?
Can I just ask one question because you're confusing me? You know, obviously, there's a wave of the baby boomers coming. I mean, we've heard it repetitively. Microphone. Excuse me. There's a wave of baby boomers coming, and it appears the state is trying to take beds out of service, you know, by offering incentives to build new facilities and stuff. So I guess my question is if this baby boomer generation is coming down the highway, 20 years from now, does the state say we need more nursing home beds, or are they saying we're going to do it a different way and we still can have this reduction of nursing home beds and accomplish what we're trying to do? That's where I'm confused here a little bit. I don't, that hasn't been clear, or are you getting to it?
No, let me clarify that for you. The state's plan is that in order to make the budget work, okay, and we're assuming there's not going to be any great, you know, economy turnaround and all that, in order to make the state's budget work 20 years from now, there has to be a reduction of nursing home utilization, okay? So as that number of thousands of people that are over now 80 years old increases, how many of them are serviced in the nursing home has to decrease to make their budget work, okay? The reason they're now targeting empty nursing home beds is if those empty nursing home beds sit there for the next 15 years, when the baby boomers come, we're going to fill them up. There's no incentive to do things differently if those beds are available, right? If those beds are not available, there's an incentive, and they can incentivize other programs to look at, you know, care, assisted living, home care, that kind of stuff. So they're looking at it from a budget perspective, and how can we incentivize the industry to provide care in the most cost-effective setting that they can. Does that help?
Thank you.
I have a question about the last bullet point. Does that mean that the state's plan here is for 4 sites, like Baldwin and Glen Haven are 2 sites for the year 2012, or does that mean there are 4 property incentive options, meaning programs?
Programs. Yeah. There are 4 different programs that you can qualify under to receive additional funding to construct a new nursing home. Good to go forward? A little on the census side of it as we talk about, and this is again just speculation. How does it work? You can always argue. I always try to put a little logic behind my speculations of what I come up with. So I just picked 3 different scenarios and said, assuming that, first of all, that the unoccupied beds in Deerfield, Baldwin, and Glen Haven, and I'm assuming now they've all built a new facility as they've planned to, okay? So our assumption is they built a new facility, they're going to be a facility that people want to go to. Where does the population come from to now fill those facilities, okay? And my first kick at the can was to say, let's say that the average census in the remaining nursing homes in St. Croix County are decreased equally. Everybody loses the equal share of to those new facilities. Okay? And remember, my logic for why they're going to be full is because all the ones that have been built now are full. Okay? That would decrease St. Croix County's average daily census from 47.7 to 41.8. Okay? Again, just to kind of give you that overview of utilization. And also realize that I truly believe if St. Croix County would build a new nursing home, they would be full. Okay? Okay? So the second one, now we're going to assume that all the unoccupied beds from Deerfield are filled and pulled 100% from St. Croix County since you're in the same community. Okay? At the time we did the Deerfield analysis, they had 8.7 empty beds. That would drop our census from 47.7 to 39. So that's kind of the middle ground. Okay? Now, assuming that all the unoccupied beds from Deerfield are filled from St. Croix Healthcare Center, so everybody, that 8.7 comes from St. Croix Health Center, okay, and half of the people to fill the Baldwin and Glenwood City empty beds also come from St. Croix County Center. And the basis for that is just the proximity of those facilities to the St. Croix Healthcare facility, okay? When you look at the facilities in River Falls, they're quite a ways away from this kind of core area that we're talking about.
But doesn't that ignore the fact that our facility, the St. Croix Health Center, is the only 5-star rated one in the county?
It does.
You probably couldn't figure out how to factor that into it, but we're already got a major lead in perceived quality.
You do, but yet remember that if we think of, and I'll give you a little of the history of our industry, when the assisted living facilities started to get built, okay, before there was nursing homes and that was it. There were no CBRFs, RCACs, none of those assisted living facilities. And when the assisted living facilities came around, the nursing home census took a huge hit, okay? And it wasn't because those assisted living facilities provided better care than the nursing homes did. It was because they looked new and they were nice-looking, brand-new buildings. And that's the same thing, and again, I'm not going to argue care between the facilities. That's the same thing we're seeing with the new nursing homes that are being built, is that those facilities are perceived to have very high-quality care because they're brand-new, nice facilities. And if you've been in one, they definitely are. So again, when you're competing with who you're competing with today before the new nursing homes, I would say quality has a big deal to do with it. I'd say once those facilities become new facilities, a lot of that leverage is lost to the fact that they have a new building. And again, if St. Croix would build a new facility, they'd have that same leverage. Okay? And we saw huge shifts of people, actually to the point where now there are actually more people serviced in assisted living beds. There are actually more assisted living beds in Wisconsin today than there are nursing home beds. So that was, again, a little bit of the impact of that.
Do these numbers take into consideration the increase in need, I guess I could say?
There actually isn't an increase in need until you get out a few years. Okay?
Oh, okay.
We've actually seen a declining, and we'll get to that, a declining utilization in nursing home beds in St. Croix County over the last 3 years. So again, that baby boomer is talked about, and that's really, it's important for you guys to understand when you're making this decision, it's what are you strategizing for, what are you planning for, okay? Because in the short term, yeah, those nursing home beds won't be needed. Those people could be absorbed into the county. You roll it out far enough, and if the state isn't successful, which it's hard to believe there's that many people that are really in a nursing home that don't want to be there, okay? Because remember, that's not a place that people really say, hey, I can't wait to get to the nursing home. So if you're looking out to when the baby boomers do hit, the question is, will there be enough services? And that's a difficult question. The second part of it, though, is the financing part of it. Can you afford to finance it until 20 years from now? And that's not something I can answer, but that's something you guys need to think about. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Lester. What would lead us to believe that 20, 30 years down the road, if there is a need for more nursing home beds, that the private sector that is building them today wouldn't see that same need and build them then? Because that's kind of the way our country's built, right? A perceived need. Mm-hmm. So there's someone steps in to fill that need. So wouldn't that happen? Or
well, there's one limitation on that would have to happen first. There is a moratorium on new nursing home beds in the state of Wisconsin. You cannot get new nursing home beds in the state of Wisconsin. So you can't call up the state and say, hey, I want to build a new 50-bed nursing home. Can I have 50 beds? Okay, so that, but obviously that's legislation, like any piece of legislation, that can be changed. My opinion, more likely, is again, them thinking budget, though. They're going to say, you know what, Tim, instead of building a nursing home, we want you to build an assisted living, or we want you to start a home care agency. That, again, they're going to try to focus the growth into the areas that they need to have it to make the budget work.
But that will be still private enterprise, then would, instead of building new nursing facilities, then would build a senior assisted living, is what you're saying.
Right. Or start home care agency, yes.
And that's what the state is pushing for, to keep people in their homes longer.
Right. And that's really what people are pushing for. I mean,
yeah, I understand. That's what my mother wanted.
So those, like I said, those are just three scenarios, kind of just to give you a range of what, in the near future, what the healthcare potential census could be with the impact of these new facilities that first of all, these are only the ones that are now approved. To give you an idea on this, the bullet point, we talked about the new property incentive. Really, the incentive to the state there is to approve as many projects as they can, because in their mind, they're budget neutral anyway, because they have to be to get approved, and they're getting beds out of the system, okay? So it's really hard to believe that if there are 25 new projects to build new facilities that meet their criteria, all 25 of those wouldn't get approved, okay? And again, in this area, we have a lot of facilities trying to react to what other facilities have already done, okay? All right, any other questions? We talked a little bit about history. Here's actually the average daily census. That's what ADC stands for. So you can kind of see the average daily census for each facility, and including the capacity. And we'll actually just, that's in your handout. We'll jump to it. So the average daily census between 2009 and 2010 decreased 3.7%, and between 2010 and 2011, 8.4%. A big part of that was family care. Okay, if you're familiar with family care, what is family care's goal, which is a state program, is to try to keep people from getting into the nursing home, or try to keep them longer in their home, longer in the community services before they get into the nursing home. Part of this that we can't really explain is family care was actually suspended or capped for a period of time in 2012. So what does that mean? What did that mean to the census? And what will that mean now that the cap has been lifted? Okay? On average, the average daily census decreased by 5.9% between 2009 and 2011. This still, for the majority of the state, is the trend, that nursing home utilization is continuing to drop. That will change at some point, okay? Just because of the mass numbers that are coming, that will change. And then we talk about who does this facility serve. And for the good people that were on the committee, this is actually something that we added to the presentation because of some of those discussions. So you can see here, and obviously this is the column that we're concerned about most. I did throw 2 unique facilities in just to throw another option at you guys as you're looking at your future. TCHCC is Trempealeau County Healthcare Center. Okay? They're located in Whitehall, Wisconsin, and Lakeview is the facility in La Crosse, Lakeview Health Center. The difference about these facilities is their predominant population is behavior residents. They're truly treating a resident that most nursing homes do not want to care for on a daily basis and cannot care for on a daily basis, mainly because a lot of their need for access to psychiatry services. Okay? So again, I just wanted to throw that out. Trumpealeau County, between the counties, and when we talk about why does it say Medicaid and county up there, other counties pay Trumpealeau County when residents go there. Okay, so that's why it says Medicaid/county on the top. But this gives you an idea of how many Medicaid people, how many Medicare people, and how many private pay people each facility in St. Croix County, again, excluding those 2 services.
Are there significant differences in what I think the professionals call acuity between those entities?
You must have read my slides.
Oh, is he about to come to it?
Here's our acuity.
All right, then let me ask my follow-up question before coming to this one. That's right. That's probably just from my looking at the homework. I thought I was remembering it from studies years ago. The question is, did any of the others on your list have specialized programs? Putting aside acuity now, talking about, they apparently do not have dementia-related programs. Only the ones at the bottom had those. How about other specialty programs? Which
I would think
can build
the biggest specialty program is probably the Medicare side. I mean, a lot of them focus on, they have a rehab unit that they want to treat Medicare people in. I would say the other one is probably the dementia, where they probably don't, they're not to the extreme of Lakeview and Trumpealeau County, but they do look at taking people with dementia. For the most part, those people, and even some of these people down here that would be in that type of facility, get spread out throughout the rest of the facilities in the county. They all have a couple, 3 that, are probably a very challenging resident population that they take care of. They definitely don't take very many of those just because of the challenges to care for them. But for the most part, there's no real specialty units that are out there besides the rehab.
So we can make the argument that others that have higher census occupancy rates are doing it because they have the ability to attract a specialized kind of patient.
Well, except Medicare. Okay, I would modify except for Medicare, because what the young Medicare patient is looking for, to be kind of I'll say frank, is to go to a facility where they don't really know that the traditional nursing home resident is there. And how facilities deal with that is they'll have a dining room just for their Medicare unit. The therapy will be accessed right from that unit. So they don't really have to go into the rest of the facility and see what we all know is coming, but we don't want to know is coming. So that's kind of that specialty. Probably the biggest example of that is Dove Healthcare in Eau Claire, that is a fully Medicare facility. That's their specialty. I mean, they have very specialized equipment. They have a rehab pool that the floor actually, so they take patients that many times would still be in the hospital. A lot of facilities have small units of that they'll I'll say spiff up or make look nicer to track that Medicare census. And remember, that's a lot of our admissions to our nursing homes are Medicare people. Okay, the traditional process is I'm living somewhere else. I'm living in a CBRF. I'm living at home. I'm living somewhere else, and some catastrophic event happens to me. I fall and break my hip. I get an infection. Something happens to me that triggers a hospital admission. Okay? At the point you trigger that hospital admission, and if it requires a 3-day hospital stay, and obviously if they're old enough, they qualify for Medicare. Okay? So they're coming into the facilities as Medicare. The question is, when we talk about, I'll say the screening of residents is what is that person's payer after Medicare? Are they a private pay? And also, how long do we think they're going to be in the facility? Are they somebody that, this occurrence devastated them so much that they're going to be in a wheelchair the rest of their life now? Or they're going to be that's kind of the evaluation that occurs. But remember, most of the admissions to start with are Medicare coming in just because of how the process works.
Gary?
Yes.
Ask you to back up one slide.
I can try.
You did it. Good work. My question is, it looks like based on the percentages in the Medicaid and county column, that really demonstrates those homes' willingness to take on the Medicaid and the county-assisted patients, right?
Right.
Which I think was a concern that some people voiced, was that there wouldn't be a place for those people to go. And clearly, all those private homes are more than willing to take those patients on. Is that right?
And realize, just to clarify that, is if we go back to the empty bed slide, that's why, okay? Because they have empty beds available. And as we all know, if you put a Medicaid person, at least it's going to cover a majority of the overhead, even though it's not going to cover your full cost. Same thing with any business. You might sell something for 20% off, but if you get enough volume more, it helps cover your overhead. So the part that's important to realize there is and this is the $20,000 question, if you want to say, is as the population ages and we begin to cross that supply-demand line, that's the key, is now will those facilities continue to take Medicaid patients? The most likely comment is it's probably not to the same extent that they do. Many of these are not-for-profits also, so they also have a mission to serve, and so many of them would continue to take some, maybe not as many as they do today. But also the big question is if they're Medicaid and the state's funding isn't there, how successful will the state be in pushing those people back into alternative services? So it's kind of a two-part wheel there is yes, if we stay as we are today, the demand will definitely exceed the supply somewhere down the road, okay? We're talking probably, again, when the baby boomers get to be 80, okay? That same initiative, the state's saying we need to change how we do things between now and when they turn 80 to service them differently. And we don't know where that's going to turn out. I mean, we don't know how successful they'll be versus the supply-demand analysis.
Am I interrupting? I have a question. I'm looking at the places that seem to get the most private pay. Is there any correlation between, private pay and level of service? Because it appears that CCH and Deerfield are getting, as a percentage, the highest amounts of that, or the highest paying clients. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, I would say,
or how would you say?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily the quality, because again, quality for most people is deemed in the physical plant that they see, not in the care that's necessarily happened there, okay? If you look at CCH, they are probably the newest facility and most modern facility prior to Deerfield opening in our county. And these two, obviously, with this just opening, okay, and this one having been kind of the poster child for a newer facility, that's the reason that private pay is higher there. Again, people look at a brand new building and say, boy, they must provide great care, okay?
So that goes back to your assumptions in terms of the migration to the newer homes and how you see more people headed in that direction, and obviously why you didn't include or factor in the 5-star rating, right?
And also realize that we have a history of that. We already saw this in the assisted living world. Okay, we saw all the assisted livings take many patients out of our nursing home because they had new buildings. Okay, so that even though it's a small sample that we're using for the new nursing homes, this has already occurred in the between the nursing homes and the assisted living world when the assisted livings were built. They weren't providing better care, and many times they were probably providing care that was above what they were qualified, but they have that new facility. That's the perception typically of quality, especially for people that don't understand, they're not a nursing home expert, I guess is the way to put it. Any other questions on this? So again, and acuity is very difficult to calculate, okay? It's a very hard thing to calculate. But there are actually 3 types of scores that the state actually calculates every quarter, except for the behavior score that's calculated once a year. And this is as of 12/31, which is the latest information available. And so this just gives you, obviously, the higher the number, the higher the acuity, okay? These scores are based on what's called an MDS, which is a minimum data set, which is an assessment that the facility does to determine what care needs a resident has, okay? So this is, in essence, self-reporting, if you want to say, because the facility completes the assessment, okay? And then that assessment is turned into a score based on the states using that information. Yes?
I think stepping back to the previous slide where you talked about the payer mix, I understand that individual may enter the facility as a private, but then they go through their assets and they end up on Medicaid. How does that affect the decisions that facilities make?
I think typically, if you've spent your assets in a facility, you haven't come in the door Medicaid, I think typically most facilities will allow you to, they'll have you stay there until your care needs are met. Where the difference more is I'm a Medicare patient coming in the door, and my assets are already gone, and now I'm going to be Medicaid. That's the patient that's a little more difficult to determine who will take them and will they be taken, okay? And there's no way to know that other than just to look at the percentages of who takes Medicaid, okay? But there aren't very many that say, well, you've run out of money. Actually, I don't know of any facility that would say, you've run out of money, we're going to discharge you.
But the option is, if they are Medicaid coming in, there is a question of...
Right.
I mean, all facilities have the same pressures that we would have.
They would. And that decision is, for many counties, also made as far as, can they afford to take, all Medicaid? No, they can't. They wouldn't be in business. Or it would be subsidized to the point where that you're in essence subsidizing the state's underfunding of the Medicaid program.
Well, since it's not legal for any facility that accepts Medicare to decline a Medicaid patient for the reason of Medicaid, if they have the facilities and staffing to treat that person, and maybe you're the wrong guy to answer this, but what do you know about complaints, lawsuits, activity of patient advocates around the concept that perhaps some of the private homes are refusing people when they shouldn't be? Are there complaints to that effect?
I think there are.
Volume up?
Yeah, I mean,
sideways?
I don't think there's any formal process that's typically gone through. The most common that I'm aware of is a resident may try to get into the facility in their community, and they may contact a board member for that facility and say, we tried to get my mother in there, and they turned her away, and then they deal with it. Typically, why? What was the reason for that? So it's not typically more of the complaint surveys that what we see in this industry is care complaint related. So and so didn't care for me correctly. Or appropriately, or at least following the regulations. So there isn't really a lot out there where we see complaints that, geez, I tried to get into, nursing home A and they wouldn't let me in. Typically, like I said, if there is, that's handled at the community level among the board members of that facility and that family.
Did you say earlier that the Trempealeau County Health Facility, other counties pay Trempealeau County to accept patients from their county?
Yeah, they have an IMD program. They serve a lot of people younger than 65, and so they're able to do that through that program. Lakeview, actually, I don't know if you're familiar, they actually set up a consortium of counties, and those counties subsidize Lakeview for their residents, which was a pretty significant legal battle, I'll say, between the state and the federal government and being able to do that. But yeah, they actually, for Lakeview, it's a little more precedent because these are nursing home level residents where they actually service other counties' residents and then charge those counties a per diem, which is above the Medicaid rate, to care for them. All right, now I got to remember what slide. We good here, or we want to look at this more? Done?
You didn't describe the second and third.
Oh, okay. So this one here, this is all the residents in the facility. What's their acuity of all the residents in your facility? This is what is the acuity of the Medicaid residents in your facility. And the third column factors in a behavior score. How many residents do you service that exhibit a behavior care need? And obviously you can see down here, that was kind of why I put these on here, because one of the options also for your organization is to become a Lakeview or a Trumbull Healthcare Center. I don't know what the need for those services are here. Those are, again, typically residents that many nursing homes don't want to serve and can't serve efficiently because of the lack of resources. So this is just an example of what two other counties have done to kind of answer that question of, are we serving somebody that somebody else doesn't really want to serve?
Sorry to be asking so many questions. Hopefully I'm asking the same question that Travis would ask. Since there are only 72 counties in the state and the numbers go higher than that, am I to assume that the ranking is for the state of Wisconsin?
It is.
All right.
That's where you fall in compared to all nursing homes in the state.
Okay. Then there's just a mass of data up there. It appears to me that the St. Croix County Nursing Home is falling more or less in the middle of the pack in all three of these scales. Am I reading it wrong?
You are. I would say they're obviously a little bit higher on the behavior side, okay, on the 78th percentile.
But somebody else is at 1.6 and somebody else
right.
is at 1.229.
But again, I'm looking at, you're saying just St. Croix County. I'm saying, yeah. I was saying compared to the whole state. Here they're definitely in the middle even compared to the whole state, except on the behavior side they're higher than the state.
I was thinking within the county because, we are, one of the issues we're faced with is, do we continue to provide a service because it's different from the services being provided by other entities in the county?
Yep. And also realize that you're talking about a population of 50 residents on a given day. So this numbers move around quite a bit, not drastically, but they can move around some depending on that. Especially if a facility would have 2 or 3 people that are really high behavior and then they would leave, those would definitely skew the numbers. But for the most part, it's the best comparison we have at a point in time. So, yeah.
Aren't TCH and Lakeview part of a county consortium where they get support from the area counties because of their specializations?
Yeah. Trumbull County really does it on the IMD side, the younger population, and they're okay there without a real consortium. Lakeview actually services, it's an frail elderly with behaviors population they service, and there is a consortium. I want to say there's, to guess, 10 counties besides theirs that put residents there, and those counties pay additional amount to put them there.
Are there any is there any service like that in our area?
Well,
that would specialize in those.
Probably the closest is Trempealeau. There's another consortium. Clark County is trying to start another consortium like this. I'm not sure where they are in the process, but they're at least looking at it. And the other one is on it's Clearwater, which is in the south east part of the state. So there are counties, I think, other counties looking at this model to say, should we be a regional provider? One thing I could tell you that Lakeview experienced, just from their experience, was their utilization of the service as they've started to charge the per diem has actually decreased. Okay, counties were using it much more frequently when they weren't getting charged, and now as they're starting to get charged, those counties are finding alternative places to care for. Probably the lower end people that probably are borderline needing to be there. The higher end people are still coming, but they did see a decrease in utilization from where they started when they weren't charging and they were just providing it in essence for free to other counties. We good? So overview of the three options. So now we've kind of talked about history, I'll say. That was your history lesson, if you want to say, for today. Remaining the current building with expense reductions. Assume decline in census-related opening of new replacement facilities, homes in Richmond, and pending projects in Baldwin, Glenwood City. And I would say, I would throw in that and others as the property incentive is out there. Assume healthcare center makes expense reductions to wage and benefits, and we'll talk about some proposed ones that are on here. And then consider changing mission to care for more residents with behavior. That's that piece I just talked about. What is the mission of the facility? The second one, close sell nursing home. Consider applying for phase down agreement and closing nursing home in light of unoccupied beds in the county and aging facility. Look for someone to purchase a nursing home license and building or just nursing home. And we've actually went through that with a couple of hospitals that have spun off their nursing homes. I can tell you this clientele that's typically coming to look to buy would typically be a for-profit. You could get a not-for-profit, but most of the ones that we've had respond to RFPs have been a for-profit that really think they can make your facility work under the Medicaid program. That's with lower costs, lower benefits, that's the model. So I'm sure some of you guys know Russ County, if you're familiar with them. They're in the process of selling their nursing home. So, and then the third one, build a new nursing home. Consider applying for the Medicaid nursing home property incentive. The thing I will comment there is if you choose this option, you got a long way to go and a little time to get there kind of thing. We anticipate that the property incentive application will come out in October, and it'll be due sometime late December, early January. So not that it's not doable, but you're kind of behind the 8 ball as far as getting into that first round of applications. They are planning on taking applications quarterly. So every three months they would take a new round of applications. Right now the thought has been January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, September 1st. Again, not a real reason to limit it if they're coming in budget neutral to the state's budget. And then consider again changing mission to care for more residents. You could obviously do that in a new facility also.
Okay.
Yep.
I think I have a little bone to pick with the 3 alternatives because this is what I'm thinking. We really have 2 decisions in front of us, it seems to me, to stay in the business or not stay in the business. So it seems, and if we stay in the business, we have to explore lots of things like changing the mission. That should not be applied only to the new nursing home.
It's also in here too.
Okay, you're right. So but it seems like if you'd make a decision to build, and then we have this short time to get there. It seems like we wouldn't want to do that without some kind of pro forma of what that would mean or the advantages or disadvantages. So when it comes to this is basically transferred to the resolution that we have to act on today, and I'm just a little uncomfortable with.
Well, and realize, and Fred has some cost numbers, I think. Realize to get this application done would not be very costly to the county to get that piece of paper in your hand. And what many facilities have done is said, let's get it in our hand and then we'll evaluate. Because if you decide not to do it, you just give it back to the state. So could you get this done between now and when they need it? You could. It's definitely doable. There are a lot of facilities that are going to do it that probably don't know as much about the property incentive as you do because it hasn't actually been officially introduced to the public. Okay? You have a little bit of insight because I actually sit on the committee that was part of this to kind of outline this. So this actually still isn't a proposed method. The application won't come out till October, and all the other facilities kind of have to deal with that same timeline also. So I think you could do it. You would obviously want a financial forecast, but I would say get the incentive in your hand first, and then go figure out if it works financially.
I do, but I still see that as staying in the business as opposed to making the decision only to go build new today?
Yeah, and the reason we lay this out, and I've been through a lot of counties where it's billed or not billed or whatever is many times these come up individually. Do you want to close the facility? No. Okay. Do you want to subsidize the facility? No. Do you want to build a new nursing home? No. Well, you really haven't answered anything, and you do it kind of yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. This really, and when I use the term, forces you to say what is the true decision and how are you going to move forward as a facility. So I think that's, and you could obviously take this one off of there for now and say what are these two, and then if we stay in the business, how do we stay in the business? Okay. But like I said, for the consulting dollars that you've paid me, I don't want to come up here and have you say no, 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 and you're right back where you were before. So that's why we present it that way.
Thank you. To follow up Supervisor Ring's comments, I think the main reason we're here today is what is the future? Are we in the service or are we not? And so I would advocate even changing the option of the order of these options that we're going to vote on is, to close cell. That answers the question, are we in the service or not? If that's, depending on how that's voted upon, then you go into whether you're going to build a new nursing home, you're going to go to a different option. But that's what I would advocate when it comes time to vote on this.
Now I've lost my train of thought on that, and so we will move on, and obviously that's your guys' call on how you handle that. So, remaining in the current building with expense reductions, and again, all this comes out, I know what I was going to say. When you think about staying in the facility or staying in the business, realize that there's a risk to both sides of that, and obviously you know that like any business. Just to let you, the risk to staying status quo is probably a shorter risk today and a greater risk in the future as your facility becomes obsolete, okay? The risk of obviously spending, and I'll throw out $7 million to build a new nursing home, there's a lot of risk today, but now that if you can make it work, there's obviously less risk as you now compete with the other nursing homes. So just wanted to, so it really, neither option is without risk to some point, but it's when you want to face and take on that risk. So, remain in current building with expense reductions. Based on an average daily census of 45, assuming 3 Medicare, 37 Medicaid, and 5 private pay, the net operating loss, including supplemental payments, is projected at $551,000. And to the point of, I don't remember who was, but somebody made the comment about the indirect costs of the county. The indirect costs of the county probably are going to just get spread out over the rest of the county. So us accountants, I typically draw that line at the $551,000 in your forecast. We don't go into all those others numbers. Obviously, could there be some savings? There could, but unless those are specifically identified, that's kind of where we draw it. But also realize it does include the money that the supplemental payments that you've gotten. Going down to kind of the worst case scenario, and again, remember we're doing these scenarios because of what happened with where does the people come from to fill the new nursing home beds. Based on an average daily census of 35, assuming 2 Medicare, 30 Medicaid, and 3 private pay, then that operating loss, including supplemental payments, is projected to be $1,077,100, or an increase of 95.5%. Everybody realizes the supplemental payment you get is a fixed pool of money that the state sets aside, and you're paid it based on how many Medicaid days you service, okay? So as you service less Medicaid days, or the number of Medicaid days in the state goes down that are serviced by governmental agencies, that pot of money stays at $37.1 million, and it's just distributed to facilities at a higher amount per patient day. Okay, just to kind of clarify that for you. Down about $482,900 of the $9,400 or $942,400, or 51% of the non-wage and non-benefits. So we kind of set them off to the side. Were considered fixed and not to fluctuate based on census levels. Obviously, a big one of that is the bed assessment. Okay, unless you give up beds, the state doesn't care if those beds are full or not. You're going to pay the tax. Okay, so today you pay the tax on 50 beds. It's $170 a bed, and it's per month. Okay. Also note, this is not the max that the state could impose on a bed tax in order to get additional funding. We're not at the state max. So this 170 could go up kind of depending on what the state chooses to do with that bed assessment. Okay, this again obviously that's part of the reason from the 45 and 35 and the significant increase in the losses is many of your expenses are fixed and cannot change as census changes, especially when we're dealing with things other than benefits and stuff and staffing.
Larry, can
Yep.
Something I'm not sure everyone knows, when you look at those supplemental payments, that line on there, that's state and federal money,
Yes.
right? That's state and federal tax money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just coming out of a different pocket, but it's tax money.
It is.
And that is included in those. So we're already applying tax money to those numbers as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The remaining expenses were just projected to fluctuate based on census levels. Examples of that, food, okay? Nursing supplies are probably the two biggest ones. Obviously, if you're caring for less residents and you're managing your expenses, those should come down as your census fluctuates. Then internal projections forecast the following, and this is saying, okay, now what do we look like 5 years from now? Net operating loss, and again, the biggest thing that our industry is facing is no matter what the funding source, I'll say minus private pay, the rate increases that we're receiving from Medicare and Medicaid are not keeping up to inflation, okay? So that deficit continues, especially the Medicaid deficit, continues to grow year after year. That deficit between what it costs to care for somebody and what they'll pay for it. Obviously, from the state's perspective, when they look at all the challenges they have, we continue to provide the service even though that's true. And as long as we continue, and I say we, the industry, as long as we continue to provide it, they're going to continue to buy it. Okay? As long as we continue to provide it, even though we're losing, they're going to continue to buy it. So, and then, so that's net operating loss increases from the 551 to 933, 300, or 69% over that 5-year period, or 14% annually. And again, that's that reason for that. Not to say that there aren't things in there you can change. You know, if you look at, you know, benefits is a big one. How much health insurance? That's a big item. What is that going up each year? And then excluding indirect costs and adding the $333,000 that was approved, I'll say, for the property tax levy, the net operating loss in 2018 would be $600,000. And
I see a question.
Yep.
I'm trying to understand the difference. I'm looking at the financial statements. It says 2011 we had an operating loss of 1.57 million.
Mm-hmm.
How did we get from a loss of 2011 of 1.57 million to only 551K?
Hey, Bob, do you want to let them know what's in those, where above the line or below the line we've kind of...
Yes, the difference, we're starting with an operating loss of $1 million. I have $1,521,000. Then from that, we're deducting the supplemental revenue of $461,000 to come down to $1,060,000 loss. And then from that, we're also then allowing for $369,000 of property taxes. And that brings us to a 2011 loss of $691,000.
Okay, so said a different way, the true cost to taxpayers is 1.57 million. The difference that you made up all came from taxpayer money, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's a fallacy because we don't have any control over the supplemental pay. The state and federal gives us that money.
I didn't say we did. I'm
But
just
it's
saying
still-
that it's taxpayer money.
But it's not county money. We're focusing on overall taxpayer money, but we are focusing on not on what the taxpayer in the county. We're trying to include costs outside of our control.
No, it's not cost. It's just
How are we going to control supplemental pay then? We can't tell the state or the federal level not to give us that money.
I'm not saying we can or we can't. I just want to be clear that that's all taxpayer money, whether it came from the left pocket or my right pocket or my hip pocket.
Well, then let's not include Medicare and Medicaid then, because that's all taxpayer money also.
Supervisors, let's save this debate for when we get into our debate. Let's get Larry through his presentation. We're going to have this one, but let's save it for when we get to our options.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
So again, these were actually identified by the staff of St. Croix County. I'm just kind of putting them up there with potential adjustments. And again, these are kind of the things outside the box that you need to think about. The top one, increased minimum FT requirements for healthcare eligibility to 0.8. What that means is if you work less than 0.8 FT, you're not eligible for healthcare. That's one, to give you an example, that Dunn County actually implemented to make their facility work. They actually reduced, they didn't reduce the eligibility requirement, they actually reduced how many positions were at a 0.8 or higher. Require 30% health insurance premium participation from the employees instead of 10%. Reduce the employer HRA contribution from 73 to 50, and then adjusting the wage rates to the Wisconsin American Healthcare Association average wages. And then this just gives you the financial impact. Obviously, the bottom line is that total reduction of $664,100.
In 2012.
2012? 13, yeah.
Using 12's numbers and applying them to 13's budget.
And the $664,000 in reductions, is that all the nursing home employees, or is that just the union employees?
All.
Okay.
All right, closed cell nursing home. Nursing home downsizing, and actually this has the kind of the wrong title on it. I actually talked to the state. This incentive actually has another clause that you downsize and build a new facility. So I talked to the department and said and I didn't tell them who you were, but I just said if a facility was looking to close their nursing home, would there be any state dollars available, any additional state dollars available? They did say there would be, and it's through a negotiation process, so determine how much that is. I actually asked them if they would approve this same idea of freezing your revenue throughout the phase down, and haven't heard back from them yet, but that's so. So in essence, the program has been submitted to CMS. The program I'm talking about, the negotiation piece, is already in play, so that doesn't have to get approved. It's already in there. This question here, this deduction of having to reduce 25%, 50, or change in license to 50 would exist. Obviously, we're closing. We would meet that, so that doesn't come into play. The length of the phase down is to be negotiated with the state. Obviously, that is based on who you're servicing now and how difficult they are to relocate to somewhere else. Medicaid revenues are frozen at a level prior to the phase down through the agreed upon phase down period. Again, just from my perspective, looking at it from the department's perspective, there's empty nursing home beds in the state, in your county, because that would be the first thing they would ask is, what is the demand for those beds? And secondly, they obviously want beds out of the state if they can get them. So I think you would have some success getting some type of phase down agreement from the state. And then this last one is we've actually requested clarification. We did get confirmed that there was a program, they just hadn't confirmed what that program completely was. In this frozen rate model, just to so everybody understands what happens, if your average Medicaid census was 37 at the time you entered into the agreement, and your Medicaid rate was $181 a day, and the state agreed that it would take 18 months to phase down the people out of the, in essence, close the facility, and they left uniformly. So they left throughout, you didn't all of a sudden discharge half of them right at the beginning. The St. Croix County would receive approximately $1.8 million, $1,828,000, in addition to what your normal payment would be for the people you're caring for. related to the phase down program. Obviously, if the facility were closed, and this was talked about in one of the comments, you have all these other issues of what are you going to do with the building. Obviously, you got to maintain it. You have to keep it secure and stuff like that. Those are not offset against the 1.82 million. Yes.
Is this that 1.82 million? That's what we would negotiate for, or
Yes.
is that the non? Or, okay.
That's the amount above what normally you would get paid. 181 for each Medicaid resident you have. Okay. This actually, they would pay you 37 Medicaid residents for $181 a day for the full 18 months, regardless of what your census is. They, in essence, freeze the revenue side for the full phase down period.
Can I ask another question? Why did you choose 18 months? We have a smaller facility than we formerly did, but we used to take in about 7 patients a month. And if you were planning a shutdown, you'd stop admitting new patients right away, I think, and then it would take far less than this.
Yeah, the 18 months is because that's probably the longest the state's going to give you. And if people look at this the wrong way, they look at it and say, well, let's say the phase down is going to take 5 years, and we're going to get paid that amount for 5 years. All of a sudden, that 1.8 million grows to 3 million. So I wanted to give you probably the max side of that. And like I said, there were actually 2 facilities that did phase downs that actually extended. One was 4 years and one was 5 years, and they didn't even go out of the business. But like I said, that's a negotiated item. Obviously, from the county's perspective, the longer you get that phase down agreed to, probably the more money you're going to put in your own pocket. Yep.
On the previous slide, at the top, you said that the program has been submitted to CMS for approval. You've already done that for us?
No, this is talking about the incentive program. That's part of the states has to submit their plan to CMS each year. Okay, they submitted it on September 28th. The Department of Health, Wisconsin, submitted their plan to the federal government to CMS on September 28th.
So this isn't going to have anything to do with us going from 72 to 50?
No. No.
Okay.
On the sale side, remember there's 2 parts of the sale that you can deal with. The first part is you can either sell the nursing home license, you can sell the building, or you can sell the nursing home license and the building. Okay, so the license is a separate asset from the building itself. If you sell the nursing home license, obviously you're not giving it back to the state, so no phase down incentive. They're not going to pay you even though you're phasing out of the business. Medicaid allows no value for the license in the reimbursement formula. Okay, if I pay you $1 million for the license and I borrow the money to pay you for that, none of that money gets reimbursed. So the license part of this equation usually has a very small value. The facility has the larger value because that's what they'll allow to be reimbursed. Recent nursing home license sold for $2,000 per bed. That was last year. Cannot sell a partial nursing home license. So you can't take your 50 beds and sell 10 beds to 5 facilities. Okay, you have to sell an entire nursing home license. Potential for beds could be removed or could be moved out in Richmond. And I looked at this, and the health service area that you guys are in pretty much goes all the way down to about the La Crosse area, and it's probably 2 or 3 counties wide, so it's kind of that strip down western Wisconsin. Those beds can get moved anywhere within that health service area by somebody that owns another nursing home in that area or wants to just rebuild the full license. Again, they can't. And in this case, I'll give you an example. Let's say a facility buys your 50 beds and they have 2 nursing homes already. They can split that license because now they own it all one. They can put 25 beds in 2 different locations if they wanted to. So once it gets under common ownership, there's a lot more flexibility on what somebody can do with that license. Physical plant, potential buyer would want any required improvements reduced from the purchase price. Okay, we've seen that over and over. They're going to come in, they're going to have somebody do an assessment of your facility, and they're going to determine from their eyes what would it take to make their facility what they want it to be. Now, how far that goes, if the roof's leaking, they're probably going to want the roof patch, okay? Do they want all new carpet and paint? And that's a negotiated item. But typically, that's reduced out of the purchase price. And typically a 50-bed facility, you're probably not looking for more than $1 million, and that's assuming that the facility needs almost no improvements. That's about all you're looking to sell for, which comes out to be about $20,000 a bed. New facility. Facility will clearly demonstrate an improvement in quality care and resident life it expects to achieve. Okay, remember we talked about services being brought to the resident instead of resident being brought to the services. That's really that definition of quality of care. It's not that I'm a 3-star facility and I'm going to become a 5-star facility. It's really about the environment. How is the physical plant of a new building environment going to affect your ability to provide care to residents? Okay. The facility will demonstrate a cost savings to the department that will, at a minimum, equal additional rate adjustments that is implemented. In essence, it's going to be budget neutral. Whatever they're going to pay you because you built a new facility, they want it to be budget neutral. The time frame over which these savings will be achieved will be explicitly identified in advance, and a financial template will be supplied by the department. I've already ran this template and gave it to Fred, assuming a very low Medicaid census. A 40-bed facility would qualify under the program. Nothing larger than that would qualify. And the reason for that is obviously based on your current census of being, I think at the time we did it, it was 59 is what the state would give you credit for, and having to give up enough residents to go into the community to pay the cost of that new facility. That's the balancing act. All requests will include a return of numbered licensed bed to the nursing home, to the department, so again, you can't sell them off or anything. All requests will be related to one of the 3 allowable options. And it isn't described below, but I can describe them. The biggest difference in the options is how big the facility is you're going to build. There's an option if you're over 61 beds that has an incentive. There's an option between 60 and 51, and then there's an option from 50 below. The smaller the facility gets, the better the options are. And construction may not begin before the approval date. So you can't, and here's the first, this is the one you would qualify for, which is the 50-bed option. The keys there are, in essence, they're going to double how much they allow for the property component from $75,900 to $135,000 per bed. In essence, if you want to figure out, if you're the accountant guy, want to figure that out in the world, if you take 135 times 50 beds times 7.5%, your depreciation and interest has to fit into that amount. Okay? For most facilities that are not brick construction, that are wood construction, you can make the 135 work. And then also can include an add-on rate of up to $10 a day, and that's a sliding scale. This is really impacted mainly by how many residents you're giving up. The more beds and residents you're giving up, the more of this $10 you'll be able to capture.
Larry, can I, excuse me, sorry to interrupt you. Is this program proposed or is it available today? Because I remember earlier you mentioned that
it is proposed and submitted today to CMS. So, you know, it's a 99% chance that it's there. I guess that there's very likely that CMS would pull this out of there because it wouldn't have a reason to. So I would say it's still proposed and submitted, but most likely it will be available. Probably in October will be the applications come out.
Okay.
Okay? And then this is just the assumptions that we made in order to model. The nursing home would decrease to 40 beds. The cost of the bed would be $170,000 per bed. That's on the high end. Typically, again, a wood frame would be between probably $140,000 to $150,000. 100% of the project cost would be financed at 4%. Important component here is you're looking at general obligation debt. Okay? Through Russ County or Dunn County, we pretty much figured out no matter who does the financing for you, they want the county to have skin in the game, not just the healthcare center. Okay? Because obviously the initial thought was, well, the healthcare center should stand on its own, and obviously that's how the financial model is built. But from the lender's perspective, they want the county to have skin in the game also.
Did you include the furnishings, the new equipment?
Yes, this is all inclusive. Includes construction management fee, architect fee, and the capitalized interest during the construction time frame. So all that's included.
But to Buck's point, beds and monitors and
yep, all of it's in there.
Everything. Okay,
yep. And you're looking at a 50-bed facility probably between 600 on the low side, 600,000 for that type of stuff, and probably $1 million depending on how many beds you can take out of your existing building and stuff like that. So, attain 6 Medicare private pay, 14 private pay, and this is the key thing to make it work, an average daily census of 38, including 18 Medicaid. Okay? As that Medicaid number goes up and you're servicing more Medicaid, the flavor that the state wants you to do this goes down because they're paying you that higher rate for those Medicaid. Okay? So that's just, and how this is generated from the state's perspective as far as modeling is they let you take your current Medicare and private pay census at your existing level and just roll those over. So in 2011 you had 6 Medicare and 14 private pay, and then we fill in the difference in the downsizing with Medicaid. There is no settlement, okay? What I mean by that is if you get approved and somewhere down the road they figure out that you're costing them money, there's no adjustment to the rate to get that back. That risk is completely on the state. Conclusion, the property rate would increase to $31 a day. It's at, I think it's a little over 5 right now, so you're looking at that. Facility would receive the $10 property incentive. So you'd get $35.80 per day for 38 Medicaid residents. And I do it on all, even though remember we said it was only going to be 18 Medicaid residents. When we model based on the whole population being Medicaid to see if it will work. So you'd have a monthly debt service that you could afford of $41,375. A debt service payment of $41,375, 20 years because it's general obligation at 4%. Supports a loan of $6.8 million, roughly. Okay, can you build the 40-bed facility you want for $6.8 million, all-inclusive? I don't know that answer. That's an architect question, but that gives you an idea of what's out there. Remember, a portion of the financing would be general obligation, and a new facility layout should provide more efficient staffing patterns because, again, now we're dealing with the 2 floors. That's obviously not built into anything that I've laid out today. So there's your 3 options. Remain in the current building with expense reductions, close, sell nursing home, or build a new nursing home. Oh, I'll give you that back before I walk off with it.
Request for a break. We'll take a short break. Bathroom break for a drink of water. Come back, and the members will proceed to the discussion on the resolution and the determination of the options. Be back in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Board members, we're back in session. We have some work cut out for us now, and here is how I think we should proceed. I have spent some time consulting with Corporation Counsel and Assistant Corporation Counsel and the Administrator. We've looked carefully at the rules and bylaws of the board, and we have reviewed carefully Robert's rules. I want to proceed very expeditiously in terms of what those rules require when an action item is forwarded us to it with a blank, and Robert's rules does prescribe that. Here's the way that I would intend to proceed. The resolution that is forwarded to us from the standing committee would be the main motion, and the chair will entertain a motion to advance that resolution and a second. That places it into discussion. But you are aware that contained in that resolution is a blank line. It says, therefore be it resolved, that option, and then there is a blank. Robert's rules, in its wisdom, does prescribe what you do in that event. And in the event you have an action item with a variety of options, then you need to vote on each of those options separately and determine which one, if any, receives a majority vote of the board, and then insert that option into the resolution. At that point, the resolution now is completed, and it is, in fact, the debatable main motion. The integrity of the standing committee, therefore, is that they forwarded us the resolution that will become the main motion, and then they said, choose from one of the following three options. And they numbered the options 1, 2, 3, so I think the integrity of the committee is we just simply vote on them in that order. Option 1, build a new nursing home. Option 2, close or sell the nursing home. Option 3, remain in the current building with expense reductions. I direct your attention to the language in the resolution. Option 1, Option 2, Option 3. That does in fact fit the requirement of Robert's rules. Those would not be amendments to the resolution. We would simply be determining which one of those, if any, receive a majority vote of this board, and if one of these does receive a majority vote, it goes in there. For instance, as we vote on option 1, if option 1 would receive a majority vote of this board, that becomes the option language that would go in the motion to be debated. If it does not receive a majority vote of this board, we would proceed with option 2. If option 2 receives a majority vote, that becomes the language in the resolution to debate it. If it does not, we proceed to option 3. So we will descend option 1, option 2, option 3, and determine if there is a majority vote.
What happens if there is? What happens if there is not?
If all three of them don't receive a majority vote?
Yes, sir.
We have entertained that is a possibility. I guess I don't expect that to happen, but trying to anticipate all possibilities. If that should occur, it is the opinion of Corporation Counsel, and I concur with that at that point, if none of these options receive a majority vote of this board, we have exhausted the options that were forwarded us by the standing committee. At that point, the chair would be obligated to pull from further consideration the main motion because there is no place to go with it. We have exhausted the options. That moves the ball back to HHS. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Supervisor Oxford.
How many votes would be required to pass a bonding referendum to build?
3/4 of the board, but that's not a consideration that's in front of us today.
But for option 1 to move forward, it's got to have that much support, doesn't it?
At some future point. This board today, by a simple majority, could decide that that is the option that we wish to pursue. That could be done. But you are correct that at a future date, if we would have a bonding resolution, it would require a 3/4 vote of this board to approve a debt issuance.
So even though if we don't have 3/4 of the vote, we would still move forward with that option?
We would move forward with consideration and planning for it, and at such point as this board was, if they were asked to approve a bonding issue, it would require a 3/4 vote. Now, the alternative to that would be if we didn't bond for it, if we took it for whatever reason out of investment funds that we have on hand. Supervisor Peterson.
Question, if in that scenario, would also possibility be a binding referendum that would direct the county to, rather than a 2/3 majority vote? Would that be an option?
I don't think so. I think this board needs to vote on the issuance of a debt instrument. Yeah.
I guess where I was coming from is we seem to be, for 10 years we've been batting this around and hearing from the voting public. I'm thinking maybe they should somehow be given the ultimate say that we need to do this.
Yeah. Probably prerogative, an option for the board, but I mean, that's a separate decision of the board.
Supervisor Malik.
I'm pretty sure we've been advised before that we can't do a binding referendum. In other words, what we did before as advisory referendum were all that we could do. I suspect that the 2/3 thought is coming from the ability of the electorate to override the levy limit. That may be what you're thinking about, but that's not the same thing as a 2/3 vote of the citizens to authorize a bond issue.
Supervisor Yard.
I was under the impression from the presentation that you did make a statement that, county involvement was required if a bonding issue was to proceed forward. Could I get clarity you know, in that subject, or because you introduced a different element, we could just take it right out of county investments, which, I mean, that's kind of a curveball at me. I never heard that before, so.
I would suggest that would be unlikely, because that would probably put us below our investment policy as far as liquidity requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Ring.
I've just got a question of clarification. So if, let's say, build a new nursing home is voted on, doesn't have a majority, and does that eliminate us from even exploring that in the future under option number 3 to build with expense reductions? Can it come back? Because if that's the best business decision, is that just off the table forever? Could it come back?
Well, Supervisor, at the moment, we are dealing with what has come to us from a standing committee, and I place great integrity in the standing committees. That committee adopted a resolution and said to the board, choose between one of these 3 options and put it in that blank spot and debate it. That's what I'm faithfully trying to do at this point. I think as we proceed through discussion and selection, that will become clear. So let's try that. Are you wanting to move the resolution?
I wanted to move the main motion, yes.
Okay.
The motion. Get
All
this
right.
thing out in the status
We now,
so we can get
we now
the
have a
meat of
motion
it.
to move forward. We have a motion to approve the resolution to determine the future of the St. Croix Health Center nursing home. Is there a second? It's now been moved and seconded. That is now our main motion. That's what is on the floor. Now, board members, we need to determine what option goes in there. My suggestion, as I earlier outlined, which precisely follows Robert's rules, is that we now begin to discuss, number 1, build a new nursing home, and at the end of that discussion, vote that up or down. If it receives a majority vote, it goes here. If it fails, we go to option 2. Supervisor Horn.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion on the floor, basically changing the order of the options. I think we're all here, and I think the public needs an up and down vote on whether we're going to close or sell the nursing home. So my motion would be to have that as the first option. If that does not fail, if that fails, then we move on to the second option, which would be build new. If that fails, then we're at remain with reductions. So that is my motion.
Is there a second? Second from Supervisor Osnes. So you are simply, Supervisor Horn, you're reversing the order. You're switching 1 and 3?
1 and 2. 1 and 2.
Excuse me, 1 and 2, yes. You want to start with close or sell the nursing home as option 1.
That is correct. That answers the questions, are we in the service or are we not?
All right. Option 2 would be to build a new nursing home.
So if the board has decided we're in the service, then it gets into how do we stay in the service? What do we do now that we're going to be remaining in the service?
And your motion would indicate that option 3 is the current option 3, remain in the current building with the expense reductions.
That is correct.
That now becomes a debatable amendment. That motion has been made by Supervisor Horn, seconded by Supervisor Osnes. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, I think you're ready to vote. What you're voting on is the amendment only that was presented by Supervisor Horn, seconded by Supervisor Osnes. It reverses the order in which we would vote in the decision tree, starting with option 1, close or sell, option 2, build a new nursing home, option 3, remain in the current building with expense reductions. All in favor of that amendment, vote yes. And that is approved. And if nothing else, I think that indicates that there's probably no particular strategy in how we vote. We're just trying to do it as expeditiously and fairly as possible. At the end of all of this, we just need to make a decision. We have now determined the order in which we will discuss and debate. So we now have a main motion on the floor. We need to determine the language that goes in there. And the first option that we are going to consider is to close or sell the home. At whatever point you're ready to vote, we will vote on that to see if it has an up or down vote of this board. If it does, it goes in there. If it does not, we move on. Is there any discussion on option 1 in your resolution, option 2, to close or sell the nursing home? Discussion. Supervisor Hawksford.
I'd like to share with the other board members just some data that, and projections that we received from Fred Johnson. It was at our August meeting. And just to set the stage for that, we asked Fred to project out what the financials would look like over the next 10 years. So he understood that we expected to see the most favorable numbers that we could and the most realistic numbers that he thought he could deliver. So starting in 2012, and again, these are Fred's projections. They're in our board pack from the HHS meeting. He projected in 2012 a $1.68 million loss. 2013 is a $1.74 million loss. 2014 is 1.91. 2015 is 2.03. 2.16 million in 2016. 2.3 million in 2017. 2.4 million in 2018, 2.58 million in 2019, 2.74 million in 2020, and 2.9 million in 2021. Those aren't my numbers. Those aren't a consultant's numbers. Those are the director of HHS numbers. That means it's going to cost, and that's an operating margin number, over $22 million over the next 10 years. I don't see how we can move forward with a business where the director is projecting those types of costs.
Dwayne.
My question is those numbers that he gave you are reflectant on if we do nothing, correct? Is under an as-is situation?
Yeah, those were his projections.
Okay, but if we were to do something different, like get into the mental health or build a building, those figures probably are not necessarily accurate?
Well, I would have hoped his mission was to give us a pro forma to make it reflect the best that it could be. So my assumption would be, and I don't know if he factored those types of things in, but my assumption would be is that if there were ways to financially improve operations, that he would have factored that in and brought those proposals to us. That was his mission. That was what we asked for when we asked for these projections in this pro forma.
Supervisor Asmus.
I'm wondering if Fred could help us out with that.
It's been a little bit since I've looked at that projection and worked on it with finance, but I can speak to, first off, Supervisor Hawksford, what line are you specifically referring to? Is it the bottom of page 2 of the 10-year?
Operating margin line, right in the middle.
Okay. What we did is the board had asked for some projections, and we had done this in the past with Larson Allen. So I believe we used some similar projections based on what Larson Allen had done. What we did not do is, at the time, we obviously were not aware of the property incentive opportunities that are out there. Since then, we've also looked at average wage and fringe in the nursing home industry that are not included in this. So what we did is more of a current, if we stay as we are, these projections are carried forward. If I had missed the intent of Supervisor Hawksford or the board in terms of best case scenario, I apologize. But what I can also tell this board is that in the past we have brought forth from the Health and Human Services Committee a plan, and this was in August of 2011, to build a 50-bed new facility and a 48-unit assisted living. The 50-bed would be for skilled care, and that motion was tabled. So to look at additional options that would include building new or other types of expense reductions, I believe at the time what we looked at is where we currently are at in terms of our payroll and other things that the assumptions that we use primarily with Trent Fast. And I would also ask our finance department to weigh in on that, but I believe that was the way this scenario was put together.
That's correct. That at that point in your packets now is a new 5-year projection, and you can look at that same line, the operating loss margin, and this wouldn't include, this is a 5-year projection forward, and that would include the non-staff adjustments. This wouldn't include any wage and benefit adjustments yet going forward, but you see that page, it's 2013 is projecting an operating loss of $1 million, by 2018 $1.4 million, again estimated, projected.
I believe that's packet page 65 for.
Supervisor Horn.
Thank you, Board Chair. So I guess maybe some follow-up questions then. So of the cost-saving ideas that the unions have brought forward, are those reflected in these numbers? Some of them, possibly all of them?
Not in the numbers that Mr. Hawksford discussed, because we didn't even have the list at that time.
Good, thank you. So I know in the public comment period we had some, at least one employee of the unions talk that they are willing to sit down and help make this facility more efficient, as long as it's fair and equitable. One of the things that we found that the unions have made some concessions. Some other employees in the nursing home did not have to make those. So it's basically, let's make it fair and equitable with all the nursing home employees. If there's going to be concessions, it should be fair and equitable across the board. But I think what we're hearing from them is they're willing to work with us. And again, if we have employees who are willing to work with us, why don't we continue to work with them? Obviously, I'm a huge advocate of keeping the facility open. One of the other public comments was talked about the values of houses and income levels around the New Richmond area. Yes, it is lower than other areas of the county. I'm not disputing his facts. He's probably dead on. But those same people voted 83% in support of the nursing home. I'm not smarter than my constituents. I have a supervisor, a manager out in California. He tells me what he wants me to do during my day job. Sometimes I disagree with him. I can sit and talk with him about how there may be something that we could do better. But at the end of the day, he makes the decision. He's my boss, just like my constituents are my boss. He tells me to go to Ireland, I go to Ireland. My constituents have said very loudly to support the nursing home and to vote to keep it open. 83%, and that's exactly what I'll do. Thank you.
Supervisor Hood.
We hear a lot about that referendum. We heard a lot today. But we don't hear too much, other than from Mr. Irwin, that the community that was given the information, was given the true numbers that we've now been given on the HHS committee, did not approve that referendum. It failed there. The only way that you can get this referendum to pass is if you doctor the numbers, which is what happened. It did not, and no one can possibly say that it was only going to take $333,000 in county levy. Everyone knew that was not a correct number. But that's what was put on the ballot, and that's what was approved. So when I take that advisory referendum into advisement, I also take that other community that had the real numbers and voted it down. So I am willing to look at that advisory referendum. And I am a new board member. And so when I went out and I knocked on doors to talk to people, I did not have anyone tell me, keep the nursing home open no matter what it costs, which is what I heard at the last HHS meeting. I did hear people say, listen, we expect you to wisely spend our taxpayer money. That's what I'm looking at when I look at you. And I have my kids living with me, or I have my parents living with me. I'm struggling to make it. Please be responsible with my money, and please don't raise my property taxes. That's what I heard over and over. So I am listening to my constituents. The other thing I have to look at here, and what we have looked at in HHS, besides the numbers that Mr. Hawksford gave, these are not numbers that we came up with. We have numbers from Trent Fast, the auditor, and he shows that our cost, departmental costs per resident day at our facility are $280.82. He compared that with 18 other Midwest government nursing homes in our area, government nursing homes, not privates. So we're talking apples to apples. Their costs were $189.41. We're $90 a day more expensive. We have the most expensive facility around, and it's losing massive amounts of money. So clearly, there has to be a change in the way we do business. And Mr. Fast also said at one of these meetings when he presented his audit, Tim, you're right in your assessment. This is a business plan that's built to fail. It is unsustainable. That came from the auditor. So clearly we have to make some drastic changes. And if the union members, or if all the workers there are willing to make those kind of drastic changes, fine. But we've had over 10 years of trying to get those changes and those costs down, and it hasn't happened. So that's why we're here today. If people can be upset with us as board members, whatever. But the facts are, we have the most expensive nursing facility in the area, and that is due, as I asked Mr. Johnson and I asked the auditor, due to our inordinate, above average salaries and benefits. It's not a mystery where these added costs are coming from. And we've tried to get those costs down in the past, and it hasn't happened. And that's why we're here today.
You had your hand up?
Yes.
And then Supervisor Schroeder. Supervisor Rotino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To all our board members, I see the close or sale as a potential win-win situation here, and here's how. Number one, if we would sell the facility, the service would still be able to be maintained to the community, and secondly, it would take the county out of the business of doing business as a nursing home. We've seen these numbers. If this number of 1.5 or 1.06, whatever you want to use, was just this year and we were just facing it today, I could see, well, maybe we need to make some concessions and changes. It's been that way for a number of years now, and it's out of control, and it needs to be addressed. The other thing that I look at here is a win-win situation, potential sale. We could also have a potential sale of the 500 acres of property there, the farmland, and we could bring our county in the next 2 to 4 years completely out of debt. We're holding about a $7 million debt load right now, and with all that change, we could do a lot of good things for a lot of this community in other ways and still provide that service through the private sector. Thank you.
Supervisor Schroeder.
A couple points. As we saw in the presentation, if we sell the beds, that does not mean that that facility is required to stay there. They can move the beds anywhere they want outside of New Richmond. So they're not required to keep those beds there if we sell. And the second point is on the referendum. I went door to door when I campaigned and promised to be a voice of the people. I told them I am for it. I informed every person I am for us maintaining the home, but whatever way we vote, whatever way the people vote in my district, that's what I'm going to do. If it ends up against, I will begrudgingly support what they said. That is the way I walked through my whole district. And to disregard what they're saying completely is, personally, I take offense to it, because it is saying that the people are not as smart as me. And I think that is wrong.
Supervisor Hood?
No one's saying that the people aren't as smart as us. No one's saying that the people that work there aren't great employees and they're doing a great job for the people there. I have been through the facility. I have toured other facilities in the area because I wanted to learn about this issue. I wanted to make a good and informed decision, and I feel I have. I am saying, however, Travis, that we do know more. I didn't know as much when I ran for office as I do now, because I've been given the numbers. I've been given the auditor's numbers. Don't shoot the messenger here. We're just looking at the numbers and saying, this is a business plan that just doesn't make sense. We have to make some changes here. And to me, if you look at the last 10 years, it's cost us over $14 million. If you look at this scenario going into the future, as Mr. Hawksford said, it's going to cost us another $22 million. And we have, what do we have? I think the number came out earlier today, 1,300 foreclosures in the last 2 years in this county. That's people who have lost their homes. Get in your car and drive around town and start counting to 1,300. That's a massive impact. People are hurting. There are lots of empty businesses in town. Drive around and look at the commercial real estate that's sitting empty. We have to look at that as a county. We can't just print money here. We have to balance the budget. So if we're going to spend money to either build a new facility or continue to operate this facility, it has to come from somewhere else. Do we want to not seal coat roads? Do we want to lay off deputies? Do we want to take money from ADRC? Do we want to take it from Healthier St. Croix, Public Health? I mean, there are other areas we can take it, but we're going to have to take the money from somewhere else. I think we need to keep that in mind.
Supervisor Malik.
Mr. Chairman, with all respect, I agreed 2 years ago that I would give a talk to the Garden Club at 1 o'clock, and I've got to leave. I think everybody in this room has made up their mind. I mean, we could state the arguments again, but I think a vote at this time.
Are you moving the question?
Well, that requires the 2/3 to shut off debate, so I'm just suggesting that we're ready to vote.
Chair inquires if you are ready to vote on this option.
I would like to make a comment if I could, please.
Supervisor York.
I said some of this at the last meeting that we had, and we went through and asked the county for what's called mandated and non-mandated services. And we got this horrific list of things, I mean, as long as your arm. And the county nursing home is not a mandated service. It's something that the county elected to get back into back in the 1890s, whenever it was. And for a reason that existed at that time, which I think was very valid, to take care of whoever could not be taken care of otherwise. In this year, 2012, those same conditions no longer exist. Medicare, Medicaid, the private sector, we can see them building new nursing homes. We can see them really coming up and, I'll just say, beating us at our own game. They're building new facilities that are state-of-the-art. The care issue keeps coming up as it was described to us. Care appears to be defined by age of facility. Maybe at some point in time there'll be no new facility, so then it'll come back to a normal basis of determining care levels, but that is not true today. The long term, if it was 14 million that we lost since the year 2000, I heard 20 million. We look at, call it potential savings and give backs, that's 600,000 a year, 700,000, pick a number. Take that times 10, that's 6 to 7 million when the projected loss is 22 million. Saying what Mr. Hood says, we're just back to playing the shell game here of not fixing the problem and just having some gestures being made to keep this thing open. I would hope people would look at that whatever we've heard today does not fix the problem. We have been not afforded answers and cures to this. We've been afforded Band-Aids, and we need to look at this very seriously. The county is not the best in this business. The private has been eating our lunch at it. I have to say it that way. I do think we have an opportunity, as was said to us, for us to exit this business gracefully that's non-mandated, and only time will tell if we make the right decision or not. I mean, 3 years from now, we could either look great or we could look really stupid. Thank you.
I suspect we're ready to vote. At this point, we've got a minor little software dilemma, and that is that we're going to need to fool the system. And I say this carefully because I don't like saying the word let's fool something. I said this is not an amendment. We're going to vote simply on this option. But the software requires this in a certain format, so we have a recorded vote. So I'm going to take the liberty of having a motion on this one from Horn and seconded by Osnes, since they moved the amendment, simply to drop it in our software so that we can vote on this option. That's all we're doing. We're now going to proceed to vote on the option number 1. If you favor option 1, you will vote yes. If you do not favor option 2, you will vote no. If this receives... I'm going to do that, but now I'm confused on what I said wrong. It is to close or sell. If you vote yes, you are voting to close. If you vote no, you are declining that. If this receives a majority vote, it becomes the language. If it does not receive a majority vote, we go to the next option. Okay? But the software has to have that as an amendment so that we can vote yes or no. Okay. You tell me when you're ready to take the vote.
I'm ready.
All right. Supervisors, proceed to vote, and you're voting only on option number 1 as identified by the makers of this motion, which is to close or sell the nursing home. Proceed to vote. And the motion fails. At this point, actually it's not a motion, that vote fails. We now proceed to number 2. So now we are ready to debate build a new nursing home. Are we clear? All right. Discussion is now open on building a new nursing home. Supervisor Schrottner.
A question of clarity. Going forward with building the new nursing home, it's just to set us on the path? Like we aren't required to pass a bonding agreement to submit for the approval by the state to.
Right.
Okay.
You're right.
That is. I was just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Supervisor Hood.
It would seem to me, if we have the most expensive workforce in the area, in the industry, why on earth would I want to take that expensive workforce and continue it on? So there have to be, if we build one, there are going to have to be dramatic reductions in pay and benefits. And then I have to also ask, why would I want to go to, it's going to be a bond issue to the people, to build a facility that is already being provided by private enterprise? And we have 73 empty beds on average in the county. Why would I ask the taxpayer to build that when private enterprise is willing to do that? I guess it comes down to what you believe in America. Do we believe in private enterprise or don't we? As I said before, it'd be like building a McDonald's across a McDonald's. Why would I want to get into that business? They're already doing it and doing it well, and I'm going to have to do it at higher costs. if we want to do that, let's go across from Dave Holt Ford and start selling cars. As we are now at this county nursing home, that brings up another point. It's not a level playing field, what we're doing now. We're actually taking private pay residents at less than cost. So that would actually be like bringing in another car dealership to compete with Dave Holt, but he's going to be able to sell his cars at less than cost. That's not allowed in America. That's illegal. You can't do that. But we think we can do it as a government entity. So this whole framework of this debate is so skewed, it makes no sense. We should not be competing with private enterprise in something that they do better and are willing to do, obviously, as we've seen. The other point is we can build a new facility now when it's not needed, but for somewhere 20 to 30 years down the road, when we've already heard from Mr. Lester that the state is trying to change that paradigm, that we keep people in their homes for a longer period of time and we go to more assisted living, which I know is a good thing. I just buried my mother last year. She wanted to stay in her home. She made it till 89 staying in her own home. It was good for her. And it would be nice if I had had some incentives, more help, to be able to keep her in her home longer. I think it is more cost effective. So why then would we want to build on this model that we know is going to be changing 20 to 30 years down the road? Also makes no sense to me.
Supervisor Schrottner.
I don't question the service that the nursing home provides, but I question how we know that the service provided by public sector or the private sector is actually better. Where is this data coming from?
Supervisor Hood.
Well, if you go to Nursing Home Compare, the Medicare site, which I did, and it asks you to put in your zip code, which I did. It says there are 22 facilities that take Medicare and Medicaid and private pay within 25 miles of your zip code. So we know there are lots of facilities that do that. I have visited them, and they are nice. They are well done. And we hear about the 5-star rating. Some of them get 5-star ratings too. Some of them provide the same care. When I asked Mr. Johnson, do we provide something that the other privates aren't providing? The answer is no, we're pretty much the same. When I asked him, do we take people that the other facilities don't take? No, we're pretty much the same answer. So I have to look at it and say, yes, the private enterprise is doing it well, and they are doing it at a much lower cost. Much lower cost.
But so it's under your assumption that they're providing better care. I'm just focusing not on cost. I'm focusing on care. You said that the private sector provides better care, and where's that data coming from? Is it your own assumption, or is it because our facility has been granted that by an outside body? What other facilities have been granted that a capability by an outside body?
Right.
I don't know where that's coming from.
Well, no, if you go to that Nursing Home Compare website and you look, you can see what that 5-star rating is based on, and you can look at that, and you can see what complaints they've had or what non-compliance issues they've had. Okay. So you can actually, that's the reason that website is there, is that you can actually go and compare this facility to another facility and make your decision on where you would like to send your loved one or where you would like to go. So yeah, it is documented.
Okay. Supervisor Oxford.
I guess I would simply say, do we really, really want to burden our taxpayers with bonding and more debt? How is there any logic in that decision? How can you talk to your neighbor and say, hey, this is a good thing. I'm gonna raise your taxes, but it's a good thing because we'll have a shiny new building somewhere in St. Croix County. I can't do that. I wouldn't do that. I just don't think that's the right thing to do.
Supervisor Ring.
I think we've heard a lot about how the business model doesn't work and it's failed. And when I look at this option, to me, piece of it is about how do we make this, it's a new day. How do we make a business model that does work and serves the people of the people of the county, now and in the future. I do want a long-term. If these beds go away, you know, I worry about that sector of the population that may not be served. I think we have great options. The competition is great. But what I think this does, it gives us the opportunity to have a business model that does work. We can explore it. If it doesn't make sense, then we wouldn't build. But I think it gives us the option to look at that, maybe new other service areas, the consortium that we talked about. That's where I'm at.
Supervisor Horn.
Thank you, Board Chair. I agree with Supervisor Ring. I think it gives us more options. Obviously, it gives HHS boards. We need to work with our employees. Building new is, as we've heard, is an application process. So even if we apply, we may not receive the funds from the state. But I think what Supervisor's Ring point is that it preserves more options on a different model, which I think we all agree that we need. So I'm going to support voting for building new, and thank you for your time.
Supervisor Hawksford.
One more point. It might expand our options, but it prolongs the pain. It prolongs the losses and the tax dollars that are being spent on the nursing home. Why would we want to do that?
Supervisor Kiesler.
Well, I've sat here now for 5 months and not really said a word because I believe that you have to listen before you talk, and that it's in listening that we learn. It's in talking that we teach. And I speak up on this issue because I think it's vitally important. Once we've decided that we're no longer in the business, we've got to do something right. At this point, it's about doing something different. The other option is keeping the same old, same old. We know that's a dead horse. We know that's never going to be a facility that's going to be viable. At this point, I believe the only true option, the option that will leave us thinking outside the box, that will give us options to actually create a model that may work, is to build anew. I've sat here adamantly opposed to pay for performance. I mailed you folks all sorts of data that suggested on studies around the world that pay performance in an intellectual business like we're in wouldn't work. But I voted for it. Why did I do that? I voted for it because I believe in our employees. I believe in you folks as supervisors. I believe in St. Croix County. And when I looked at John Schills and he said, Ron, we can make this work. And when I looked at Pat and he said, Ron, we can make this work. And when I looked at Rich Loney and he said, Ron, I can make this work. Then doggone it, I'm going to give him a chance to make it work. Because when I moved into the county back...
struggling to see how pay for performance is germane to the item in front of us.
My point is that I believe in the people that we have employed for us. And so whether or not I believe that some project is going to be the best project, I believe that the people we employ in this county can make things work if they're given the chance. If they're put on a level playing field, we got the best employees in the region. And I believe that these employees will come forward with great ideas to make it more viable. And at this point, we voted not to close. So to vote anything other than to build anew hangs an albatross around their neck that's doomed to fail. So like my other colleagues to the left of me, I will be voting for a new facility because I think that's the only option that we're left with at this point to clean the slate, try something new, think outside the box, and make it happen. Thank you.
I'll come back to you if there's no one else that hasn't spoken yet, wishes to speak. Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Supervisor York.
I understand everything that's being said. I am employed in the private sector, and what is bothering me by what I'm hearing is we're throwing money at a problem to fix it, throwing more taxpayer money to fix an ongoing problem that's been going on forever and going on, and I am a believer in this private sector. That's what's made America great. Governments are noted to be inefficient at what they do, and I'm not picking on St. Croix County, but just on a general basis, the private sector historically does better. What we've done here by masking these losses and showing what they could be going forward is inadvertently put a tax increase and or diversion of funds on the residents of St. Croix County. In other words, the money that we need to come up with to keep the nursing home going has taken away from doing something else. That's been going on for a long time. I mean, how can we, in good conscience, anybody in this room, allow that type of thing to continue and then to go and try to compete against the private sector, which is the people that funds our government, that makes us all be able to pay wages and stuff like that. We're competing against these. So when are we going to open up a hotel? When are we going to open up a car dealership? When are we going to open up an ice cream store? I mean, that's really, I know I'm being ridiculous in those statements, but that's what we're saying we're going to do. And I can't comprehend it. I just can't.
Thank you. Supervisor Schrottner.
Point of clarity first. If we were to move forward with new, that is, I think a lot of people are under the assumption that we're not going to try to fix the issues with the current budget issues with the home. We're just going to throw our hands up and say we're building you new. We don't have to address this, because to me, I always came with the assumption that we would be we'd be taking the steps to build new, but at the same time, it would make. I always thought we would be smart enough to negotiate, continue to work with the unions, continue to work with the employers to address the overspending issues that we're currently facing.
Were you addressing your question to
Mr. Thompson? Sorry.
If the decision is to proceed with the option that you're currently debating, the administration would bring back a viable business plan that would incorporate all sorts of recommendations to make the model financially viable, including the suggestions that have come forward from management and the workforce. All those suggestions, which, by the way, have not been ignored. We would incorporate all that into a new business model and bring it back to the board before you would approve it or turn it down.
Okay. And the second point I want to make is when people sit there and talk about public and private, they forget that our phone lines were set up by the public sector. Our trains were set up by the public sector. There are some things that our public sector, our roads, everything is our government provides needs in areas where there is need, or services in areas where there is need. And the only other nursing home in the Somerset, New Richmond, Star Prairie area is Deerfield, and it is full. My grandfather, my grandparents, I know a lot of people who have spent their entire life in that area, and they don't want to be moved to Baldwin, they don't want to be moved to Hudson, they don't want to be moved anywhere else in this county to live the last parts of their lives. That is where I'm coming from. The rest of the county, there are beds, but in that area, there is a need for that service.
Supervisor Hood.
Mr. Thompson, you brought up a point while I was listening to you. That viable business plan that you would come up with a new facility, would that include county levy monies and IGT?
It would include a lot of provisions. It would include most likely the use of IGT revenue.
Which is taxpayer dollars.
And it would also include some sort of recommendation for some level of support. But I wouldn't know that until we build that model.
But it would require taxpayer support still.
I can't say for sure. I can't say for certain until we build it. But it would most likely incorporate the use of the IGT revenue.
Okay, so now we're building a facility to compete with private enterprise, and it's still not on a level playing field. We're still supplying it with taxpayer dollars. And that ultimately brings us to the moral question, which is where we should be. Is that the correct thing to do? Because that puts pressure now on the other facilities who are either nonprofit or for-profit. That means they have to then cut their services. Somehow they have to cut their costs to compete, because it's not a level playing field, because they're not getting the taxpayer dollars. So they have to maybe lower their wages for their people, not buy the new rehab equipment that they would like. We have to look at that moral part of this question as well. If we're going to compete with private enterprise in this field, then there needs to be a level playing field, because that's not fair to them. It's not fair to the people that are trying to operate that home. It's not fair to the people who are working in that home. It's not fair to the residents of those homes. Maybe these other facilities could maintain that 5-star rating every quarter, every year, if they weren't having to compete with someone who is getting this level of taxpayer funding. So what I hear you're saying in the future is, even if we build a new facility, we're not going to level the playing field for those other nursing homes. They're still going to be competing against a subsidized facility.
Supervisor Kiesler.
So you're suggesting that no private sector gets government subsidies?
Supervisor Osnes.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Are you making that a formal request or an informal request? Formal request I'm going to have to vote on. I will take that as an informal request unless supervisors actually want to vote. The informal request that is a question and debate and vote. Is that the wish of the board? I'm seeing the body language agree to that. We will not formally vote on that. I will take that then as a friendly request to move forward to vote. Again, we need to drop in this as an alleged amendment, correct? Okay, so we'll do the same thing, Horn and Osnes. Drop it in, and we are now proceeding to vote on option number 2, which is to build a new nursing home. All you're voting on is that option, either yes or no on building a new nursing home. Are you ready? Proceed to vote.
Do the whole thing again? You have to confirm, but I did twice.
And that is approved. That now becomes the language that goes in our resolution that received a majority vote of those supervisors present, so we will not proceed to consideration of option number 3. This now received the majority vote. Board members, now in front of us is the resolution that was submitted by the standing committee. And it is the resolution to determine the future of the St. Croix County Health Center nursing home. We have now filled the blank. So the blank at lines 34 and 35 would read, therefore be it resolved by the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors that option number 2, and that would be correct, no. We now would have to say option number 1. Option number 1, which, well, but I think we have to, the language in the resolution says option number 1. And I think that's what we're doing. The board in agreement? If you refer up to line 19, it says option 1, build a new nursing home. So the language as drafted Procedurally, all we were doing is deciding which one of those we needed. Now at option, line 34 and 35, it would read, therefore be it resolved by the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors that option number 1, option 1, is approved. This now is our main motion. We are now ready to debate the resolution that's in front of us with that language. We may have already done that, but at this point we have a main motion on the floor. Supervisor Hood.
Sorry, but I do want to respond. No, I'm not saying that private enterprise doesn't receive some form of subsidy, but I am saying that they receive nowhere near the amount of taxpayer subsidy that this facility will receive. This will only continue our problems, and we'll continue to look at numbers here that just don't make sense.
Supervisor Schrottner.
I just have a question. What is IGT?
Intergovernmental
Funds?
transfer.
It's a federal revenue source that funds, and I won't get into technicalities, I'd leave that to Larry, but funds offsets some of the costs of the nursing home. So it's pass-through money.
So it's another, like was stated before, with supplementary stuff. It's a program we have no control over.
Well, not really. It's another source of revenue that helps offset county costs. It's a program that started years ago, and so that's the philosophical argument that, you know, it's a tax, but it's at a different level of government. But it's revenues that channel through specifically county operations for nursing homes. Larry?
It's actually part of the federal match that comes back from the federal government, and it's actually set aside specifically to help government-operated facilities. And again, it's set at $37.1 million. Keep in mind, though, as the federal match is adjusted by the federal government, if that goes up, it's a smaller part of the federal match. If that goes down, it's a larger part of the federal match. But it is not adjusted because you get out of the business. That $37.1 million stays and divided among all government facilities. I mean, if there was one county that was servicing it, they'd get the whole $37 million.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'm going to call the question. I think we can stay here till 6 o'clock tonight and debate, and we all know, I think,
I just want to go on record that whether it's federal, state, or county, a tax is a tax is a tax is a tax. And what we're asking our county to do is to increase taxes in a way that can really be detrimental to this community. Thank you very much.
if we're not going to vote, I'm going to make a formal motion to call the question.
No, we are going to vote.
Okay.
Maker of the original motion is now absent. The software is calling him absent. Cindy needs to put a maker of the main motion in. So at this point, with your permission, let's have it be Supervisor Horn, because all we need to do is proceed to a vote. Is everyone clear with that?
In the minutes, it will be Malik.
Okay.
The minutes will reflect Malik.
All right. There are some limitations to the software. That's what we're struggling with.
But the second was still Oxford.
The second is Hawksford. So we're now getting that back in. The maker of the motion for purposes of what we're doing right here is Horn. In the minutes, it will show that Malik originally made the motion. Have you got Tom's second in?
No, not yet. Tom has to.
Tom, you have to put that in? The original resolution, you seconded moving it forward to the floor for discussion. All right. All right, board members, we now have in front of us a resolution to determine the future of the St. Croix County Health Center nursing home. The blank line has been filled in. That blank line now indicates that we would proceed with consideration of building a new nursing home. We are ready to vote on the main motion as completed. Everyone clear? Proceed to vote. And that is adopted. The resolution is approved, and I thank you for your patience. I ask the county clerk if there are any reports of correspondence or rezoning requests. You have none?
No, I have nothing to report.
I remind board members that we will convene on 23 October, not as a board, but as a committee of the whole. So keep that in mind. Administrator Thompson already indicated what the agenda items will be that day, and we will convene as a committee of the whole. And with that, our agenda is concluded, and we are adjourned.